A few days ago, I asked you guys if you wanted to see a supercut of all of my Shibuya arc reviews, and surprisingly, the vast majority of you said yes. So here's the video. I've also included the Jogo vs Sukuna video, which did get taken down by Toho, and I added a bit of extra sort of fluff to it to hopefully dissuade Toho from automatically claiming it. Additionally, I wanted to say thank you so much for over 10,000 subscribers at this point. I feel like just 4 months ago when I first uploaded my video, I wrote down 100 subs by the end of the year and I'd be ecstatic. So to 10x that in such a short amount of time, I'm kind of speechless. But more than anything, I'm excited to keep making content and get better and better as time goes on, especially for the year 2024. Without further ado and me being sappy, enjoy this 2-hour-long video. Jujutsu Kaisen's Shibuya arc is off to an insane start, and I can't help but feel bad about MAPPA animators. They probably don't even get to see their families all that often anyway, so at this point I have no idea what MAPPA's threatening them with, because holy shit, has the quality of episodes 6 and 7 been absolutely insane. Hidden Inventory was also phenomenal, the art was amazing, the animation was fluid and dynamic, a new and fresh soundtrack that reflected the story almost perfectly was there, and new anime-only content that enhanced the source material rather than take away from it. So far, Season 2 has been phenomenal. I'll be covering Hidden Inventory in its own video, but I wanted to immediately jump into the Shibuya portion since it is my favorite arc, and due to just how blown away I've been with just these last 2 episodes. Anyway, with that lengthy glazing session out of the way, hey everyone, my name is Orion, and today we'll be covering episodes 6 and 7 of the Shibuya arc. Episode 6 starts us off back in the present, Nobara, Yuji, and Mei Mei having presumably finished the mission. Yuji and Nobara aren't ready to head back just yet, so they settle on going to a movie and shopping respectively, while Mei Mei hops into the Benz to head home. Some hilarious anime-only content follows right after as Yuji tries his best to convince Nobara to join him by showing her a trailer of Human Earthworm 4. Human Earthworm being the series of movies that Junpei and Yuji bonded over back in Season 1. Nobara isn't Junpei, so she is not very interested and just leaves Yuji to go shopping, as the anime hard cuts to arguably the best scene in the episode. You know how earlier I talked about MAPPA animators not seeing their families? Well, this scene right here is what got me worried about those poor animators in the first place. I mean, I've seen seasonal sports anime not get this kind of animation and polish, yet JJK gets something so good for an ultimately unimportant scene? Why? Like, this right here should be just a green light. It just bing 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 bing, we are getting peak this season. Like, Toho and Mei Mei are playing ping pong, and this shit looks good. Imagine the later episodes. Actually, we don't even have to imagine, because episode 7 is fucking insane. Anyway, Mei Mei is also still a baddie as per usual. Ozawa is interesting. Her purpose in the story is short, but it is also sweet. And I'm a firm believer that getting low-stake moments like these is super important. Shibuya is an incredibly heavy arc, and it doesn't give any characters time to be their goofy teenage selves. So an episode dedicated to the shenanigans between these 3 is much needed. And I'm just a big sucker for wholesome Yuji moments, given how much of a fantastic main character he is. And seeing him as someone that can find the good in people that even those people don't realize is just an awesome character trait for him. Especially given just some of the hardships that he faces in the entire series, not just in Shibuya. Gege Akutami is a fantastic slice of life and comedy author, which is really insane given just how depressing he decided to make the rest of the series. Like, why did you have to do this? You could have just written the entire story to be funny and lighthearted like this restaurant scene with Nobara and Ozawa and then Mei Mei as well. But you chose to make our characters suffer. Why did you do this? Gege Akutami, I am coming for you. You will not escape. Anyway, Ozawa comes and goes, but at least MAPPA did give her a good send-off. The art direction and music really sell the scene, and again, they really elevated the manga once again. As we enter into the second half, however, the mood completely shifts. The bright orange hues and rays of light are shrouded by mist, rain, and a blanket of grey as the gang looks for the traitor. That traitor being... Mekamaru's confrontation with Geto and Mahito is tense and revealing. Binding vows are probably one of my favorite aspects about Jujutsu Kaisen's power system. I loved Nen contracts in Hunter x Hunter, so when Jujutsu Kaisen decides, I'm gonna take that concept and just apply it to the entirety of the series, I get very excited. The fact that even someone as knowledgeable as Geto just can't do anything about it, he can't directly bypass the rules and is just forced to comply, I think is really good. The worst thing you can do when creating a power system that has set rules is then create a character that can directly break those rules because of how much stronger they are. Fortunately, Jujutsu Kaisen does a really good job at not doing this. and this right here is a great example of it. Mechamaru has to be healed by Mahito. There is no ifs, ands, or buts. It has to happen. Mechamaru is healed, but Mahito decides, well, yeah, I have to heal you, but that doesn't mean I don't have to beat your ass right after, so he squares up. Unfortunately for Mahito though, Mechamaru is an esteemed gentleman, and has watched many a mecha anime, so he whips out the Daiguren, and the real fight between the two officially begins. If the second half of episode 6 was lightly pressing on the gas pedal with your foot, the first half of episode 7 is forcefully planting that same foot with a brick on top of it to make sure it doesn't move. This fight is wild. First of all, the mech is 2D. Second of all, everything looks so good. I'm not big on knowing animators by name, but even at a glance, you can tell that these are some very heavy hitters. This is insane level of animation for the first fight of Shibuya. What the hell? The effects work for Mechamaru's attacks is amazing, and these close-ups are just phenomenal and super detailed. This shot of Mahito's body exploding with a curb stomp right after, it's perfectly timed, and the animation itself is clean and crisp. And as if the mech itself wasn't cool enough, Mechamaru decided he needed to pull an Eva reference on Mahito, and as a resident Mahito hater, I was hoping he'd get his shit rocked here. But this little literal rat makes his escape as he changes the form of his soul, mimicking different animals in the process. What, you want me to talk about the elephant in the room? Oh well, why not? Add one more to the pile. Everybody and their mother is talking about this on social media. The ghosting and dimming in the episode was extreme, far more than anything we'd seen in the series so far, so it does make sense that people notice this and want to talk about it. However, my issue comes from when a lot of these people hold some uninformed views on why the episode looked the way it is. This sequence is not poorly animated. Neither is this one or that one. You can feel free to look at the behind the scenes that animators share on Twitter. Look at how crisp this is. I won't delve into this too much, but it's just how Japanese TV works, and JJK gets double the punishment because of its airtime. Ghosting is when a previous frame bleeds into the current one, creating this sort of trail effect, and dimming is, well, dimming. Bright lights are made a little less bright. Both of these are requirements by TV regulations so that people don't get cooked by seizures and epilepsy. They'll ultimately get removed for the Blu-ray release, but for now, it's such a shame that impressive animation that was undoubtedly worked very hard on gets, well, shit on, not just by the laws, but uninformed viewers as well. In the time that I spent explaining why the episode looks the way that it does, Mechamaru gets, well, kinda cooked when Mahito decides to open his domain.
Psych!
Mechamaru is the absolute GOAT. Not only Mechamaru, by the way, but Miwa too, as she, metaphorically, cuts down Mahito with her simple domain. Truly, she alone is the honored one. This shot right here, of Mahito desperately trying to morph into something in order to try and survive, is really well animated and disturbing. But in the end he explodes, the domain lowers, and now Geto must face Mechamaru and the honored one. As the image of Miwa shatters and Mahito makes his way inside the cockpit of the mech, looking like an abomination from a Junji Ito manga, things look grim. However, Mechamaru, the absolute Giga Chad that he is, brings forth his final puppet to go against the most monstrous of the disaster curses. And as the puppet crumbles from Mahito's strength and intensity, Mechamaru flies past the plume of smoke and debris, channeling everything he has into his last remaining simple domain. He lets out a battle cry that pierces the heavens as he gives his all to defeat Mahito. The two reach for each other, and Mechamaru...
私はメカ丸とももっと仲良くなりたい。だから、いつか会いに行くからね。
Remember when I said that we won't be getting many wholesome moments from here on out? This is just the beginning. The Shibuya operation is officially underway as the sorcerers remain on standby, waiting outside the veil for any curses that manage to slip past Gojo. Speaking of Gojo, where is he? The chants of the citizens are relentless and frantic, having just witnessed hundreds to maybe thousands of their fellow men and women get sucked into the Shibuya station. But just then, at 8:31 PM on the 31st of October, Satoru Gojo arrives in Shibuya. And that's the video. We're 2 episodes into Shibuya, and I could not be any more excited for everything that follows. Mappa already flexed on us with hidden inventory and how just fantastic they made that, and now they've gone even further beyond with just these first 2 episodes. Assuming no breaks and, the same level of quality, the next 16 weeks are going to be insane. And I wouldn't be surprised if Shibuya ended up as the best shonen arc in anime history to date. This is a fantastic time to be a Jujutsu Kaisen fan, whether you only watch the anime or you decide, well, I want more of this and read the manga.
この程度で僕に勝てると思ってる脳みそに驚いたって言ってんだよ。
Holy shit. Let's talk about it. Episode 8's out. Woo! Pop the champagne. We're chilling. Shibuya arc. Gojo versus Disaster. Wait. Oh. Oh, the episode was, okay. You know, following the absolute insanity of episode 7, it makes sense that Mappa decided to slow down quite considerably for this one, but, ooh, this is an episode, huh? Visually, I think the episode looked solid. The drawings were good, they were largely consistent, and there was no quote-unquote bad animation. I think changing the order around to give more focus to Yuji rather than Gojo makes sense, and I think it was the best decision given where the episode ends. Now, let's shit on it for a little bit. We touched on ghosting a little bit when I covered episode 7, but I would argue that this episode was punished by it much, much, much more. It's not even close. When you create a JoJo-style rushdown, it is incredibly hard to make it look visually interesting. Making it more difficult to see? Not only does this shit not help, it actively ruins the shot. It could have been insanely good animation. No amount of Yuya Takahashi working on this shit could have saved it. No, if you can't see anything, no matter how the animation is, it's not gonna look good. What the hell? Oh, this is getting so frustrating every week, but hopefully the Blu-rays will be our saviors for us JJK fans. With this episode in particular, though, it was a low priority episode. I think that's obvious when you look at the limited animation and this ungodly holding of shots. Why? We are not in Dragon Ball Super. Ugh, we're in JJK. This is so much more noticeable when we're looking at it in JJK because of just how fast the episodes tend to go by. The silver lining is that these were mostly limited to gags. They still felt jarring. I think this bit with Yuji works. This one with the Grasshopper really doesn't. The shot of Mahito, Hanami, and Dagon works, and this one of Grasshopper still doesn't. The opening minutes of the episode were largely good. I think the descent to the lower levels by Gojo was done well, and the pre-fight banter with the disasters was solid. Yuji's interactions with the baddest bitch in sorry, I was held at gunpoint, so let me just reread here. Yuji interacting with Mei Mei and her brother Wee Wee was funny, haha. I especially love this gag of Yuji having to hold Mei Mei's axe. He's been holding shit for other people twice now. 3 times if you count Megumi and Nobara as separate people. Why they're doing this to my boy makes no sense. Somebody go in there and save him. He is not your pack mule. We briefly touched on the animation for Yuji vs. Grasshopper, and yeah, I didn't have glowing reviews, and I still don't have much more to add. The animation is limited. The choreography itself isn't nearly as exciting as some of the other fights we've seen in Season 2. Maybe once the Blu-rays are released, these Ora shots are going to look a little more crisp and my opinion might change. But for now, I feel pretty confident calling this one of the worst fights in the series. There's a couple standout cuts like this one and this one, but the rest of the fight just was pretty average. I mean, even this scene of the Grasshopper punching through the walls to get to Yuji conceptually is pretty cool, but I think it falls flat when in practice in this episode. One other nitpick while we're shitting on the episode. Sound design. I don't want JJK to be JoJo's. Yuji does not need to have machine gun ora-oras like Giorno. But for the love of God, please make some of these punches feel like they are doing damage. It feels like this guy is whooshing through air, not fucking blowing this asshole's brains out. Please fix this for some of the later episodes. Please, Mappa, I'm begging you. Please. Yoshiko Sakakibara made her appearance last week as the narrator, and we didn't get too much from her. She read out the time and Gojo arriving to Shibuya, but this week we had a good portion of text to be read out by her, and I'm gonna be honest, I'd always envisioned the Hunter x Hunter narrator, but so far, I think she's doing a fantastic job. I think her voice definitely sells this creepy and dark atmosphere, and I'm just itching to hear more. God, I wish I was that handrail. The final third of the episode covers Gojo's initial confrontation with the disasters and the introduction of domain amplification. A lot of people have been asking how Gojo can be touched. Well, we finally have an answer. The jump in quality is noticeable in parts, mainly this shot of Jogo as well as piercing blood, and the actual effect of domain amplification is pretty sick. Gojo in this episode is super unbothered, and I love that. He's been unbothered most of the series. I'd guess in Zero, not really, but in that one he was a little busy committing hate crimes on Miguel. If there is one thing though that they did really, really well, it would have to be Gojo taking off the blindfold. The decision to give the eyes a blue glow, the delivery from Yuichi Nakamura, and just the panning up to him pulling down the blindfold. Very nice. A+ scene. And to all the manga readers that are going, but you know, the manga didn't do it like the manga. Look, he's not looking the same angle. Shut the f. Overall though, episode's a low priority one, so I didn't expect it to be all that spectacular. I think I would have been much more amicable if we didn't have to deal with excessive dimming and ghosting, but overall I do feel pretty confident giving it like a 6, maybe a 6.5 out of 10. Definitely the weakest episode of season 2 thus far for me. Thanks for watching, drop a like if you enjoyed, and I'll see you all next time. After the mid-tier episode we got last week, episode 9 needed to hit. And hit it did. This is easily one of my favorite episodes in the entirety of Jujutsu Kaisen. From the music, to the art, to the animation, and the oh-so fantastic voice acting. Seriously, Yuichi Nakamura and Takahiro Sakurai absolutely knocked it out of the park. I'm gonna just get right into it because this glazing is getting a little out of hand, and the fight itself starts almost immediately. Gojo tells Hanami that he's going down first, and we get this really clean cut of animation as Gojo walks towards them. I mean, look, this guy walked at them, and they were already shitting themselves. And despite them having domain amplification, Gojo just says, fuck that, starts throwing hands with pure curse energy alone, and just look how Jogo is being violated for a second time, gets his arm taken off, blocks Hanami's punch with that arm, and Gojo's just too fucking cold with it. These shots of Hanami getting bodied and Jogo being flung across the station on you, they also look great. And Hanami keeping himself attached to the wall, really clean. And this little, like, adjusting, I mean, this character animation in this episode is really good. And as if Gojo just wasn't strong enough, I mean, this guy's an actor as well. He fools Hanami into deactivating their curse technique before we finally get to see feral Gojo in action once again. He tears out Hanami's branches in this phenomenally animated scene. I mean, look at just, first of all, the animation's clean. Look at the strength of some of these drawings when you pause on them. So good. Choso tries to do something, but his blood just ends up being a useless smokescreen as Gojo effortlessly stops Hanami and Jogo's attack. And Hanami, having lost some power from having the branches removed, is no longer up to the task, and Gojo strengthens his curse technique. Hanami is pushed further and further and further, and as Jogo's threats fall on deaf ears, Hanami is...
Tsugi.
They cooked. I'm just gonna say it, nah, they cooked. This is pretty much exactly how I'd wanted Hanami's death to be animated. In the manga, it definitely did feel like it happened in an instant, faster than Jogo's words could even reach Gojo's ears, but the anime's take on it is phenomenal. The sound effect of the first impact on the wall, quickly followed up by another as she gets pushed farther and farther, and then Gojo's maniacal smile and just laugh as he walks towards Hanami, and then the boom itself with the lights flickering back on, so good, so good. And one other thing I really like is Jogo being shown to turn off his flames when he realizes that Gojo just ain't listening. I mean, so far, we're not even like 5 minutes in, and this episode's a 10 out of 10 already. One thing I didn't touch on, because the episode actually started with the who Sensei is to you bit. I like that. It was neat having that little, like, film grain on it. It looked really good. No crazy animation, but the art was strong, and the lighting especially was really, really nice. I'm so happy they animated that, because when I read that in the manga, I don't know, that shit hit. That shit hit hard. Like, it's only 2 pages, but I'm glad they went above and beyond and actually added that to the episode. The scene of them playing Mahjong, I think, was actually really good and well directed. The choice to make them sit and play in silence for about a minute was very clever. I mean, Geto says, like, we need to hold them in place for 1 minute, and then about a minute passes. It helps the curses, and by extension the audience, conceptualize the monumental task that is set out for them. One thing that people complained about last week had a lot to do with the gore compared to the manga. The truth is that it is a lot easier to draw a few panels of dismembered humans than it is to animate an entire crowd of them. And I mean, we see that in this episode. There isn't too much crowd animating. There's a lot of scenes where the crowd is just in one pose, or when they move, it's like, it feels like they're just JPEGs being, you know, slid across the screen, and that's fine, because crowd shots are incredibly difficult to do, especially in motion. And it can't be as good as the manga. It would take a lot of time and resources to make it look as good. And again, this is a weekly anime, so I'm not expecting that level of polish, right? But despite that, episode 9 managed to up the gore to 11. And it feels much closer, maybe even more gruesome than the manga in parts. I mean, look at these shots of just these guys getting ripped apart by piercing blood and being ripped apart when Mahito shows up as well. So good. And as Gojo just gets pressured and pushed to his limits, all of his cards being taken away one by one, with only one of them left, we finally get...
領域展開無料空所
The 0.2 second unlimited void was sick. Extending this one page to a full 2-minute sequence while the narration was playing in the back, absolute peak. They cooked. One thing I would have liked to see, instead of a still image here, I would have liked to see them animated similar to how they did in the trailer with the eyes like going forward into the camera. But it's, you know, the drawing itself is very strong, obviously. And after the dust has settled, I love that they held these shots. Like, I know I complained about it last week with like holding of just still images, but here with the silence, with a buzzing of the lights and Gojo's just heavy breathing, choosing to hold it in that silence was a very deliberate choice, and it actually worked to set the tone. And then just the reveal of the prison realm, very good. I talked about it in the beginning, but I just gotta say that both Yuichi Nakamura and Takahiro Sakurai cooked here. Gojo's "My soul knows otherwise" line, followed up by the brilliant switch up in cadence from Geto, was done so well. Like, that shit like blew my mind. I don't want to say blew my mind, but that was amazing. Like, seriously, this episode just felt like such a return to form. Not just visually, but narratively as well. Awesome angles, great choreography, amazing animation, character acting, voice work, everything. This episode was the whole package. 10 out of 10. Will be watching it again. Gojo's been sealed, Ichiji somehow ended up in Essex, and Queen Mei Mei is under attack. The Shibuya operation has barely just begun and shit is already going down. Last week was fantastic, and this week is great too. We've got drama, we've got action, and the baddest bitches known to anime since Misato. Today we're breaking down Jujutsu Kaisen Season 2's 10th episode, Pandemonium. You know an episode's gonna be good when a simple scene like this is this well animated. Visually, this entire episode looked incredibly strong. It immediately gave me episode 1 vibes. While episode 1 was limited in action, the scenes of Utahime and Mei Mei simply walking around and talking were very engaging. The lighting fit the mood, the storyboards were dynamic, and the little cuts of animation that we did get were very, very clean. This episode has practically that same vibe. The lighting was visually appealing, the drawings were on model and super good, and even the tiny details like Mei Mei's phone screen lighting up as she takes it away from her ear were littered throughout. The underground portion was probably my favorite part, visually speaking. Mekamaru's contingency plan booting up, the soft blue, green, and red glows that really make the characters feel alive and that they belong in that 3D space. This cut of animation where Yuji grabs and yeets Mekamaru, it's super fluid. The green trail lines for Mekamaru are a really good touch as well. Through good storyboards and interesting camera angles, they managed to keep me engaged even though all that was happening was Mekamaru explaining his plan to Yuji, Mei Mei, and Wee. From now on, Wee. And despite how good that scene looked though, my absolute favorite of the episode has to be Gojo's final confrontation with fake Geto. I've been shilling Gojo and Geto's VAs like it was a Raid Shadow Legends sponsor, except I actually believe that these guys are incredibly good. One of the best things about anime adaptations is finally getting to hear your favorite moments voiced. On one hand, it can be worrisome if it doesn't match what's in your head, but for me at least, they did this scene justice. And not just justice, they went above and beyond. In the manga, when Geto's body fights back, it feels like a minor inconvenience to fake Geto. But here they decided to actually make it impactful, and the line about it never having happened before hits that much harder. Here he stumbles from how forcefully he's being choked and he's even drooling after. As everybody wakes up from their afternoon nap, Gojo is finally sealed within the prison realm, and the bad guys can make their getaway. Except... Gojo is just that guy. The prison realm still needs time to process his overwhelming power, and fake Geto is forced to stay behind and look after it. Choso and Jogo get into a heated argument as to whether Yuji is even needed anymore. Fake Geto isn't interested, and Mahito stares daggers at him. But ultimately, he sides with Choso and the two get a head start on Jogo. If Choso or Mahito find Yuji, they can kill him. And if Jogo does, he feeds him the remaining Sukuna fingers in their possession. Choso's brothers were killed by Yuji and Nobara, so he has beef against them. And Mahito's just the biggest hater in all of anime, so he just wants to kill him. The two girls that Geto saved in hidden inventory are back. they're older now and they want to reclaim Geto's body, but fake Geto doesn't want to hear it as he sits down to watch over the prison realm. Now, I might be talking out of my ass fully here, but last week I did touch on how fake Geto's cadence is completely different to normal Geto's. I don't speak Japanese, so I have no clue whether his speech pattern has changed or anything, but at least listening to it, it does feel like the voice actor is doing a really good job at making them sound similar yet distinct, if that makes sense. Anyway, Yuji enters the curtain. I really like the shot of his face breaking into the barriers, and these rapid fire sequences of all the transfigured humans attacking, just to show us Yuji's quick thinking and decision making as he makes short work of them, is everything. It looks really good, and even the cut of animation of him doing it is insane. This episode, for me, has hit everything so far. Yuji parkours atop a building and calls out to Nanami and actually anyone within a 300-meter range. Seriously though, this kid's got some lungs. Gojo's been sealed and plans have to be immediately adjusted. The balance of power in the world has now shifted. Restoring that imbalanced balance is a top priority. Nanami, Ino, and Megumi make their way to Itadori. As they rendezvous, Yuji, Ino, and Megumi are tasked with bringing down the veil, and Nanami heads to find Ichiji. The episode ends and we get a post-credit scene. 3 mysterious people are sitting atop the highest building, looking over the city. Fake Geto has shown these to us prior in episode 7. Is this the secret to taking down the barriers? The goal of any adaptation should never be to become a one-to-one with the source material. In my opinion, it should instead take the parts of the source that work best in the given medium it's being adapted to. Animation is almost always in motion. We have no time to let super complicated drawings sit still. There needs to be a before and after motion for the scenes to actually make sense. Take these stills from JoJo's. These look really, really good, and they're very detailed. Yet the actual movement before and after is much more simplified. The reason I'm bringing this up is to highlight how well MAPPA's done with JJK's second season so far. To me, it feels like they understand when it's important to add scenes that didn't exist or extend pre-existing ones. They know how to set the mood with the music, which was also phenomenal in this episode. The track that plays as Gojo brings down the prison realm had me soy-facing the minute I heard it. These are just some of the many ways that the anime has elevated the viewing experience of JJK. And for how strong the drawings are in the manga, actually seeing some of this stuff in motion and with the music, the voice acting, it's really, really good. And I just wanted to take a moment to basically glaze all the hard work the animators, directors, voice actors, sound engineers, basically everyone that's working on Season 2 has done. I mean, look at the reaction people had to the Honored One scene. Realistically, this was just MAPPA's take on it. It didn't ruin the scene, it just didn't match your idea of it from reading the manga. And that's fine. The one part of the narrative I want to change with these videos is that when we criticize not just MAPPA, but media in general, we should be a bit more critical than it didn't look like the original so it's bad. Instead, we should be looking at it as, why was it bad? Was the music choice off-putting given the vibe of the scene? Was the animation and art lacking compared to the rest of the episode? Did the voice actors fumble the lines? So long as we look at things from a more critical angle, I think discussions will become much more interesting and ultimately positive. Instead of flinging shit around, we can actually make fruitful discussion. The most base character in all of anime showed up in JJK this week. Gambler? Check. Womanizer? Check. Good for nothing and permanently on Hot Boy Summer? Check. Said fuck them kids and actually did? Check. After the rampage that Toji Zenin caused in Hidden Inventory and his Thor's level of chadness in death, I don't think many people expected him to show up ever again. But episode 11 gave us just that. Kind of. Let me explain. This was a solid episode overall. It featured some clean cuts of animation, good choreography, great art and visual effects, and even some really nice subtle sound design that I greatly appreciated. This wasn't necessarily a low priority episode, but given how poorly the situation is at MAPPA, the fact that we even get this kind of quality is pretty surprising. It does have me worried for later and more important episodes, but for now I'm hopeful. If you haven't seen, MAPPA employees have been going off on Twitter about how dog the working conditions are, and I don't really blame them. In my first video on the channel, I joked about the working conditions and the animators having figurative guns pointed at their head or working in a sweatshop. So seeing life imitate art that imitated life is honestly pretty sad. With that in mind, just, whenever we get so-so episodes, don't blame animators, blame MAPPA for their incompetence and scheduling. Despite these hiccups, the episode was actually quite good. I love the power system in Jujutsu Kaisen, and I'll probably make a video about it at some point. But one of the things I love is the give and take. So having the gang discover the strength and the weakness of the veil while the camera is shifting focus to the building behind them is a really, really neat touch. I also love Yuji just bodying these little goons right here. I don't know why, but look at him. Just look at him. This kind of animation with Yuji and the wires is gorgeous, and the music really fucking hits. This bit of animation for Ino also, okay, first of all, stop the music real quick. This guy, Ino, okay? Spoilers, he gets godded by the end of the episode. Why did they make this guy's intro so clean? Look at this animation as he regains his footing. Osaka and Ogami are certainly characters, They're curse users that love to torment their prey and only take jobs for money or their own amusement. Unfortunately for them, Gojo is just him. This man, as a 5-year-old, made grown-ass adults shit themselves into early retirement. The aura that Gojo has in this show is really strong, and I've been loving the way Mappa has portrayed his strength in practically every portion of the JJK anime, whether it's season 1, 2, or the movie. Back in the present, Jump Kaisen is back in full force. I think every person that has watched Jujutsu Kaisen has been foaming at the mouth for a Yuji and Megumi jumping session, and we finally get to see the two work together, trying to beat a seemingly invincible opponent. So good. We really get to see the best of Yuji and Megumi here. Megumi's strategic mind paired with Yuji's raw strength and instinct works so damn well. And there's some seriously good sequences in this fight. The anticipation here as the dog prepares for its attack. This beautiful smoke effect that must have been animated on ones because of how smooth it is. This cut of Yuji and Megumi preparing their attack and the visual effects of the cursed energy and blood. So good. I complained about sound design in episode 8, but this episode kinda shut me up. I really appreciate the sound that plays when Awasaka's technique activates, letting you know that the technique is active. The little ribbits from the frogs, the wires, the drill, practically everything was done really well in this episode. Ino's action scene for the most part was also very clean. The actual animation is really fluid, and I love the smearing and the way his body tumbles as he activates his technique to slide around. The one issue I have with not just this scene, but a couple of them in general, is the seeming lack of keyframes. Like, Ino sweeps this guy's feet, and the immediate next shot, he's on the ground. He goes for a counter and just teleports on Ino's shoulder. Yuji throws the car while yelling, but his mouth isn't animated. Lots of zoom-ins and slow motion, and a lot of these small issues kinda just pile up and become noticeable. I don't think they ruin the episode or anything, but seeing them enough times does make it worth a mention. Now this is what everybody's been waiting for. Toji, Mother Zenin, is back. Look at how goddamn good this man looks. The crisp rim lighting, sleek drawing, the drip. Whoever worked on this scene must be a Toji simp because the quality here is nuts. I feel like I'm kind of forgetting someone here. Oh, Ino, run! Well, GG. So this is Toji, but it actually isn't, because Ogami's technique allows her to basically take the information of the body of her choosing and transform into it. In this case, her grandson has access to Toji's strength, speed, and durability after ingesting what seems to be a bone fragment. Could be anything, but that's what I'm guessing it is. And I don't think I have to be the guy to say this, but this is not good for the good guys, because last time Toji was around, he kinda... Yeah, I've got no clue how they're stopping this demon god. Anyway, solid episode. See you guys next week. Bye! Oh. Oh. Oh, damn, that's nice. Oh. Okay. Yeah, let's talk about it. Jujutsu Kaisen's second season has hit some of the highest highs in the entire anime, but it's also had some of the lowest lows, at least at a glance. The problem for JJK is that the first season set a high bar, and then Hidden Inventory, well, raised it further. At this point in time, an average episode for Jujutsu Kaisen is unfortunately seen as, well, kind of mid to a lot of fans, me included. This episode has issues, not just on the surface, but beneath as well. It had 2 to 3 times the average amount of second key animators, and unfortunately this is not something that's going to change anytime soon. The reason this is bad is because it means that the show's production, well, I mean, we know this, but it's less than ideal, and not enough time is being given to these animators to make it look consistently good. Now there's a need for more outsourcing to newer, less experienced animators, and I feel bad for these guys, because not only are they being thrown to the wolves, they're also getting their kneecaps shattered beforehand. It doesn't matter how good the talent is, if not enough time is given to them, the drawings and animation will suffer as a result. Experienced animators may be able to offset this a little bit because of their experience, but even their drawings will, well, look rough. Here's a little demo of what I mean. I don't want to talk about the animation week to week, because I'm beginning to sound like a broken record, but when it's this blatant and in your face, it is kind of hard to ignore. Anyway, this episode isn't bad, because for an average anime, this would probably be considered a good episode even. But Jujutsu Kaisen is not an average anime, and it sucks that Mappa is treating it that way. Episode 12, Blunt Knife, brings us back to where we left off. As Nanami walks to find Ichiji, we get an internal monologue from him about his role and place in the world. He finds Ichiji, severely wounded on the floor, and an image of Haibara flashes for a brief moment, as we cut to the OP. I won't dwell on this too much, so as to not potentially spoil anything for anime onlys, but I wonder if starting the episode with Nanami and then cutting to Mei Mei was an intentional decision by the writers and director. Just some food for thought. Speaking of Mei Mei, I love the scene of her menacingly walking towards this loser. If anything, the direction this season for the non-action scenes has been really solid. the sway, the colors getting brighter and brighter, the close-ups when Mei Mei emphasizes something. It all looks really good, and Wee Wee is just like me, for real for real. Mei Mei is a pretty great character, and I love her for her ass. Sorry. What I mean is, I love that despite being on the side of good, she's not exactly a good person herself. To her, a life is only measured by the potential that that life has when it comes to serving her. She's morally dubious or maybe even straight up bad. The veil is broken and Yuji and Megumi discuss what to do next. Their conversation is cut short as Ino comes flying down from the building. Working together, the two catch him and thankfully he's still breathing. Later on, Yuji ends up saying one of the dumbest things ever, unknowingly of course, but sir, I know you don't know who he is, nor can you actually sense him, but yeah. Oh, right, Toji's back. Back. I may have engaged in a little bit of trolling last time. I don't think many people expected him to show up ever again. But episode 11 gave us just that. Kind of. But this time he's really back. Toji's body is special because of his heavenly restriction. In exchange for this ludicrously powerful body, Toji has 0 curse energy. The benefits seem to be worth it because it's so strong that even her grandson's soul loses out to his body, giving Toji full control. This Toji, by the way, is in his prime, as stated by Gege. So, good luck to anyone from here on out that has the misfortune of running into Toji. I salute and thank you for your service. This transition to Maki is pretty clever, given that she's basically a mini Toji, and the situation itself has gotten worse. This geezer isn't helping, Yuji and Megumi have split up, Mekamaru is not even talking anymore, and Mei Mei has to confront Fake Geto. But before that, we have to talk about, oh god, this guy. Oh god, this fight! This is probably where the episode falls apart for me, visually. This scuffle kinda just sucks. There's no impact to any of the motions, and the movement itself feels very janky for a big portion of it. I like this cut of the nails being hid, but I hate the next part. Why do they travel so slow? Him weaving through these doesn't even look impressive because I feel like I could have dodged those nails. This part looks underwhelming, and it sucks that Nobara's first encounter looks like this. The next part, however, is pretty good. Well, not her getting stabbed or kicked. I meant this Mortal Kombat X-ray sequence. The direction for the scene is really good, and I love how they portrayed Nobara's confusion and disorientation, and the limited and iffy animation actually works for this scene much better than it did before. Unless it was intentional, in which case,
I'm sorry, the animator that worked on this, I know it isn't your fault, it's Mappa's, and they should be giving you better conditions and better time, but it really isn't your fault, I'm sorry.
Now this, there's nothing to be sorry about. This entire sequence that follows Nanami's arrival is 10 out of 10 in practically every aspect. Kenshiro Tsuda, Nanami's VA, actually redid some of the lines for this big scene, and you can really tell by how intense he made Nanami. He sounds so imposing, and the character animation on his face really sells the scene. One quick thing, Mappa, why did he grab him by the ponytail? In the manga he only grabs him by the hair. I think I know what you were doing with this scene. Naughty. This is by far the best part of the episode. The level of detail on Nanami's drawings is incredible. He looks so intense, and again, the delivery of the lines is also flawless. Plus they gave Nanami his own mini Gojo moment with like the lights flickering on and off. After this man nearly donutted Haruta, he didn't even use his ratio technique. Probably so as to not instantly vaporize Haruta on the spot. Plus, tiny little thing here, they had him do the Jajanken pose. How could this not be a 10 out of 10 scene for me? The only nitpick that I have is that I really do wish Haruta flew a little bit faster, because it does look like he got off a little too easy, but still 10 out of 10 regardless. Mei Mei's confrontation with Fake Geto and Smallpox is also really good. It's nice seeing Mei Mei's deductive skills again. Back in Hidden Inventory, she had already figured out the curse in episode 1, so seeing her analyze the situation and come to the conclusion that the Geto before her is actually fake and that, Gojo's not working alongside him, it is really nice. I like that because so far, in Jujutsu Kaisen, the characters that are shown to be competent are actually competent. We're told Nanami can get shit done, and he does. Same thing here with Mei Mei, also Frau Gojo. Smallpox expands his domain and Mei Mei's in trouble, but she's actually the GOAT, and once again, Wee Wee is just like me for real. One final thing. Jujutsu Kaisen has got to stop ending episodes like this. I had a feeling that this episode would end with Yuji and Choso's confrontation, but why did it have to? Dude, now I have to wait, well, actually 2 days since this video is kinda late. Sorry about that. Overall, this was a very average episode with some really good standout moments. Season 2 is undoubtedly good. I just wish we could see what the staff could really do if they had been given more than the bare bone resources. Like with every average episode, I'm always impressed how, despite these production issues, the episodes themselves still look baseline good. Anyway, kudos to the animators, Mappa bad, and I'll see you all next time. Bye bye! Yuji vs Choso is a top tier fight in Jujutsu Kaisen, plain and simple. The stakes are high, the payoff is grand, the level of skill, instinct, and intellect on display from both fighters is intense, and the fight choreography itself is some of the best in the series. Mappa took all of this information from the manga and amplified it tenfold with this week's episode. This might just be my favorite Jujutsu Kaisen episode so far, and it isn't particularly close. It all starts so simply too, with Yuji making his way down to the station after having split up from Megumi, only to encounter Choso, who, without a moment's hesitation, fires piercing blood at Yuji. I'm going to be making comparisons to the manga a bit in this video, because I want you guys to see just how much Mappa added and moved around in this fight. This piercing blood that Yuji diverts doesn't only leave a scar on the wall or of the station or anything, it pierces directly through it, cutting anything in his path. Like 2 seconds in, and piercing blood is already 10 times more terrifying in ability than it is in the manga. I love this tracking shot of the blood orb as it gets clapped and compressed within seconds of the last one, barely even giving Yuji a moment to breathe. This POV is sick as well. They can't exactly break manga panels in the anime, but having us see the technique from Choso's point of view as he struggles to move it around is such a smart way to show the destructive capabilities and its weakness, which gets exploited by Yuji in the very next shot as he lands a divergent fist onto Choso. The double tap shakes him to the core, and the piercing blood very naturally flails around as Choso is knocked out of balance. This one attack, however, isn't enough, and Choso stands up tall, asking Yuji a very simple question. Did my brothers leave any final words? Yuji ponders this for a moment before remembering. I love the way they incorporated the ambient sounds here, timing Yuji's memory to the crackle of electricity. Oh, it's so good. Yuji doesn't hide anything and tells Choso the truth, that they hadn't said anything, but they had cried. Now enraged, Choso erupts in a veil of blood, preparing for his next attack. In the manga, Choso only fires a piercing blood here, but they've decided to extend the entire sequence. Instead, the blood slowly builds as Choso charges up. Yuji quickly realizes what's going on and knocks the orb out of his hand. The two get into a scuffle, but Choso gets the better of Yuji and is able to shake him off, showcasing an application of piercing blood not ever before seen in the manga. Well, it's not really piercing blood because he spreads it out in the wave towards Yuji, splattering him on a wall. I really like this touch of the attack not being particularly strong because of it being spread out, which is a nice attention to detail regarding the give and take aspect of Jujutsu Kaisen's power system. He pulls the blood back and focuses it on his fist, but Yuji narrowly dodges. A moment too late and it would have been his blood on that wall. Once again, the blood is retrieved by Choso as he prepares another piercing blood. I love how fast paced the fight has been so far. It's really been selling the I'm not gonna let him breathe aspect of this fight. To Choso's surprise, however, Yuji leaps into the air, in hopes of dictating the timing of the attack as he lands. Choso willingly takes the bait and fires off. The arrow narrowly clips Yuji, but ultimately he dodges it and charges at Choso. A divergent fist would be crucial here. The damage is deep and Yuji is stunned long enough for Choso's blood knife to stab right through Yuji's foot. However, as long as all it is pain, Yuji Itadori will keep going. He pushes Choso back, but the attack is blocked. Yuji quickly strikes Choso's arms, leaving him open to a solid kick. Now ahead, Yuji braces for an attack once more before piercing blood can be fired. But Choso clasps his hand together and fires once more. This time, he was hasty and the damage was minimal. The attack jolts Mekamaru away. Yuji takes cover and the two come up with a plan. I love this shot of the displays here, showcasing all of Choso's techniques as Mekamaru describes them to Yuji. An incredibly awesome attention to detail. Yuji makes a run for it and we get yet another anime-only scene as Choso tries to break Yuji's footing. And this POV shot of Yuji stumbling? Mappa, you shouldn't have. Choso is cautious, noting that Yuji has defeated his brother, so he can't be that stupid. He ran into that bathroom for a reason. But Mekamaru, knowing about his brotherly affection, goads Choso into running in. This is an awesome 3D shot as Choso races into a bathroom. His hands fill the frame as he slowly takes in his surroundings. The faucets and pipes have been busted by Yuji, and Mekamaru is perched on the wall, continuing to talk trash to Choso. Wasting a piercing blood to dispatch of Mekamaru, Yuji pulls up behind Choso and goes for a devastating punch. But Choso manages to block it. Thinking that Yuji's plan had failed, Choso summons his blood orbs. However, blood manipulation temporarily halts the blood's coagulation in order to increase the technique's effectiveness. This fact causes Choso's blood to dissolve in water much easier. Then we add osmotic pressure to the mix and convergence is dispelled. Or, simply put, all blood outside of Choso's body could no longer be controlled. And despite how inexperienced Choso is at fighting, his instincts kick in, manipulating only the blood within his body. But, at this very specific moment in time, Choso is on Yuji's turf. Jordan's versus Doc Martens. These two smoke demons square up and round 2 begins almost immediately. The anime went ham with this scene. The music as Yuji walks towards Choso, the lighting, and the narration all culminates into an incredibly amazing scene. That's just the beginning though, because as the area continues to flood, Yuji leaps towards the drain gate and punches it towards Choso to create an opening. Incredible camera tracking, and again this goddamn lighting. Words cannot describe how awesome this fight is. The camera work is great, the choreography has managed to one-up the manga, and I love how they've expanded upon Choso's arsenal in this episode. Blood Meteorite was shown in such a creative way too, showcasing the damage it left on a wall, which we slowly move away from and right into Yuji's liver, just like the shot of Toji in Hidden Inventory. Hundreds of thoughts flooding his mind, Itadori's consciousness begins to fade. Yuji will never give up. To him, his role in the world is obvious, and right now, beating Choso and clearing a path for his allies takes priority, even if it means his death. He steals his body, turning fear into cursed energy, and even though at a glance Choso is looking like the likely victor, in the depths of his mind is one thought: 3 hits. Excluding the attacks that he had blocked, Yuji only hit him 3 times, and Choso is already feeling it. Having entered a flow state of sorts, Yuji performs much better against Choso in this portion. Everybody wanted to see a reference to the raid in the anime as well, and Mappa delivered. The tension as the two almost touch fists is palpable. Choso fires first, but Yuji dodges and fights back with a kick. Choso manages to evade, and the two go back and forth in a fight that you kinda just gotta watch. Like the video and subscribe before you go off to watch it first though, right? Thank you. This clashing of fists is awesome. It takes the anime trope and flips it by having Yuji's second impact overpower Choso. And these sparks of cursed energy from Yuji's punches throughout the entire fight are an awesome touch. Another really cool anime only scene. Yuji blocks the knife only to buy himself time for the water to take effect. Choso tries to drive it in, but he can't do it in time. The blood blinds him for a moment and we get a drop kick. The drop kick through 3 separate stalls in this version. Damn. This time, Choso uses his hardened arm to match Yuji's fist, and is actually able to hold it off. Then another Choso anime original, Wolverine claws, are pulled out, but Yuji dodges them. However, having learned from before, this time Choso uses the water to his advantage. The blood dispels and blinds Yuji, and Choso's able to land a nasty combo. But Yuji's built different, and he vaults over him. The usage of the setting itself is so damn nice this episode. And you know what's even nicer? This next dropkick POV into a headlock combo followed by this beautiful bit of animation as Yuji goes for the punch with his left. That same arm that he had purposely not used the entire fight, so as to make Choso think that he couldn't on account of the first piercing blood. And as the punch gets closer and closer to connecting, an even more awesome detail. If you listen to the music of this punch, it's got the same guitar riff as the one back in season 1 when both Yuji and Nobara landed a Black Flash versus Choso's brothers. Here, have a listen. What an amazing detail. What's not amazing is Yuji getting packed up, because Choso had not only hardened his arm, but the blood inside his body where Yuji attacked as well. He goes to finish Yuji off, but then... The memory sequence was done really well. I love how as Choso is getting crazier and crazier, these black bars begin fading in more and more. And just when you think it might be an artifact or a mistake, it actually is them fitting into the correct aspect ratio for the memory that never happened. They've done this style of memory a lot in the season, but this is probably the best one so far. Yuji vs Choso was amazing when I first read it in the manga, and now finally seeing it in anime form, and it's just as glorious as I'd expected. The lighting, the art, the animation, yada yada, this entire episode was gas start to finish. Gege's in his element when he's writing a fight, especially when it involves Yuji. The fight works on every level. Choso may be a villain that Yuji doesn't know at this point, but the two are tied in ways neither character knows. And within the actual bout, Choso is clearly stronger, yet he's not out of Yuji's reach, which is a big part of what makes most fights in Jujutsu Kaisen interesting. Yuji by all means should have died versus Mahito, many times over even. But, because of his connection to Sukuna, he's immune to Mahito's domain and curse technique. In this case, blood manipulation is a real threat that Yuji can't just hand-wave away on account of his lack of curse technique. So instead, he has to find a real tactical way around it. The fight isn't won by Choso because he's overwhelmingly stronger, rather through adaptation and his quick thinking. Yuji stealing his resolve and understanding his role in the world is a powerful scene, not just in this moment, but for later on as well. It's an incredible character moment from him when he jolts himself awake again, fully in tune with his surroundings. And just when you think he can win, Gege pulls the rug from right underneath, and it honestly doesn't feel that bad. And right before the episode ends, we get our first look at Sukuna since I think season 1. Although in this one he's shrouded completely in darkness, looking incredibly menacing. As far as fights in Jujutsu Kaisen go, it's no wonder that this was a fan favorite, and now, with the anime having done it justice, I imagine it'll be fondly remembered for years to come. After the pure insanity that was Yuji versus Choso, the Smallpox and Dogon fights were going to have a hard time measuring up. And let's just be thankful that Queen Mei Mei is here, not only to save the day, but the episode too. We start off with a new sequence of her being trapped and escaping the coffin as she charges at Smallpox. The domain is actually quite tricky and traps her right before she can cover much ground. This portion of the fight felt a lot more like a JoJo's Bizarre Adventure fight than anything else, because instead of just brute strength and speed, Mei Mei has to quickly figure out how the domain and the sure hit work, and to her credit, she does. The way that Smallpox's domain works is as follows. 1. The technique is activated and the target is put into a coffin. 2. A boulder is dropped on top and Smallpox begins the countdown. 3. If the countdown reaches 0, the victim is infected with a disease that will kill them. Thankfully, or Mei Mei, Smallpox actually instinctively chooses its target based off of their cursed energy, meaning that Wee Wee and the 2 crows inside are actually unaffected so long as Mei Mei does not suppress her cursed energy. This is important because Wee Wee can't actually withstand the boulder even once. So if his cursed energy ever spikes higher than Mei Mei's, he is in real danger of just dying. In this portion of the episode, the art and animation are clean. They're actually really, really good. The scenes of Mei Mei theorizing what would happen if the sure hit actually takes effect are really unsettling and red. Yeah, that's kind of all I got. This part where Mei Mei grabs Wee Wee and hides away is new, and I really, really like the coloring and lighting that this episode has had so far. Mei Mei channeling more cursed energy onto her crow is also new, and a great way to showcase her intelligence as she confirms the effect of the domain. In the manga, I think it was only 1 crow and she never confirms it, it's just based off of her hypothesis. Mei Mei then proceeds to gatekeep, gaslight, and girl boss her brother into giving his life for her. Wee Wee increases his cursed energy at the same time as Mei Mei suppresses her, causing him to be the target of the coffin. Before the boulder is dropped, however, Mei Mei cuts off Smallpox's arm and Wee Wee simultaneously casts Simple Domain. The sure hit is disabled and Smallpox hides away in the shadows. We get this long scene of Mei Mei just looking around, and it's actually quite spooky the way Smallpox just shows up. But we finally get to see Bird Strike, which one-shots the curse, domain falls, and now the 2 have to face off against Fake Ghetto. The way Bird Strike works is pretty simple, right? She tells us it's a binding vow that she forces her crows to make in which they give up their life in exchange for explosive cursed energy. What this results in is an attack that is so strong that only Gojo Satoru has ever survived it. Now, I'm gonna be honest, I don't think Mei Mei's ever used it on anyone competent, but it is a super strong attack. I mean, this is a special grade curse spirit that got one-shotted effortlessly. The art and animation in this portion of the episode was really, really good. They nailed the atmosphere and all the extra scenes that they added were really nice and a great touch. What I love about Mei Mei as a character is that she has reached the pinnacle of her own jujutsu. She explained about it last time we saw her, but her body is honed to the max and her curse technique has evolved to a point where it can even one-shot that special grade curse spirit. Even if Smallpox isn't the same realm as the disasters, the fact that she could one-shot it so easily, despite her technique never having had any combat applications previously in her life, it's just a testament to how strong she is as a sorcerer. You know what else I love? You! So subscribe and like the video. I'm trying to hit 1,000 because it'll feel good. Thank you. Continuing with a trend of strong art, the meeting with Dogon is solid. Naobito blitzing past Nanami and Maki right after they talk shit is pretty cool because they can't even perceive it. And the shot is a little jank because we do hard cut from just Nanami and Maki's face to Dogon being stuck in time or stuck in that freeze frame. But I think this adds to the confusion of his curse technique, which I will not be attempting to explain in this video. Fuck projection sorcery. All you gotta know is that Naobito is very, very fast, and anything he touches with the palm of his hand will be frozen for 1 second. Using this technique, he blitzes Dogon and hits him so hard, he spits out all the bones of the humans he's consumed so far. This shot of him crawling towards the gang is actually kind of funny, because he's only crawling along like a image plane. Thankfully, it doesn't last too long, but it's a little goofy. He transforms into his Cthulhu form. The voice actor also changes. And now it's actually the guy who voiced Muhammad Abdul in JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, which is pretty funny. The fight itself is not funny because it's okay. It was never going to compete with Yuji versus Choso, but it did leave me largely unimpressed. There was a couple cool cuts like Nanami hitting Dogon here, but yeah, most of it was kind of mid. Now, I'm never going to blame animators because realistically, they're the victims of MAPPA's poor management, but like I said, I call it like I see it. I like Naobito's speech getting drowned out by the music, and then Dogon going crazy with his torrent of water. Looked okay. It looked better than the OP, but again, that's just like, it's a 1 minute 30 second opening. Of course, it's gonna look better. The actual anime explanation of projection sorcery, I really like. I love the way they show it by having Naobito follow the outline of his curse technique, or the frames. And this little graphic here of the animation sheets is such a nice way to show the drawback of the technique. The speed that Naobito can generate from this technique allows him to be so fast that he's actually named the fastest sorcerer alive. So fast that Dogon can't even expand his domain in time. And as Naobito continues to land critical hits after critical hits, Dogon loses access to his fingers and can't form the hand seal, and for the good guys, it's looking good. This is where the episode is simultaneously really good, but kind of ass at the same time. The color swap is really good. I love this color scheme, but the actual fight animation and choreography is not on that same level. The Shikigami themselves look good, but the movement is limited and kind of jank. Up until Megumi shows up, this has been an alright fight. Speaking of Megumi, his entrance is sick, and this shot of Nanami cutting the Shikigami in half is cold. Same with this one. This is the second time in the series so far that we've seen someone break into a domain. In season 1 we had Yuji breaking into Mahito's domain, and now Megumi into Dagon's. The difference here being that Megumi is actually contending with Dagon's domain, nullifying the sure hit. Nanami ends up all kinds of fucked up, same with Naobito, but Mappa still made sure that Nanami, their golden boy, looks as good as possible. The difficulty of leaving a domain is twofold. 1, the inside is stronger than the outside. 2, the edge is undefined and not easy to find. Because Megumi had entered from the outside, he had a rough idea of where the edge of the domain was located, and focusing all of his energy into opening a hole into the barrier, the three of them could make their escape. The usage of the word assemble here is quite crucial. If Nanami had said, "Come in, we have to get out of here," Dagon would have instantly understood their plan, and he would have just followed them immediately, because, you know, he can speak and understand the language. He isn't in the same tier as Smallpox, so this word, assemble, allowed them to all understand what needed to be done. And this one moment, this brief moment it takes Dagon to figure it out is one moment too long, and they're about to make their getaway, but... Toji enters the domain, and this still of Toji looks gorgeous. The colors really elevate the manga panel, and I think they cooked here, which is funny because I feel like they've cooked with every single Toji appearance, start to finish, with season 2 so far. I want to complain about the lack of narration here compared to the manga, as well as this slideshow entrance compared to something like the OP, but it's pretty clear that we'll get another shot of the entrance next episode. Just like how we got a new POV of, you know, Rico getting gunned down in hidden inventory, I think it's likely Toji gets the same treatment. I can actually say this with confidence since Toji has got to be Gege's favorite character, and he wouldn't let the staff get away with making it look bad. Overall, I think it's a solid episode. Outside of Mei Mei's fight, which was I think the standout, and some of the projection sorcery shots, it isn't particularly memorable. I'd give it like a solid 7, maybe 7.5. And like always though, JJK manages to look baseline good regardless of, you know, the glaring issues, which I think is a testament to the skill of the staff working on it. 103 chapters, 1 movie, and 33 episodes later, the King of Curses finally manifests once again. Ryomen Sukuna has taken over Yuji's body, and he's stronger and faster than we've ever seen him in the anime. But before we talk about the #1 menace in JJK, we first have to talk about last week we only got a short glimpse of Toji entering Dagon's domain. People got mad over it not having enough narration, or it being not animated well enough, and that Mappa had colossally fumbled the scene. I'm clearly built different, and alongside other rational, non-lizard brain viewers, correctly guessed that, you know what guys, we gotta calm down for a second, because they're probably gonna reanimate the scene in the next week. And, would you look at that, they did, and they made it look incredibly majestic. The way the arms slowly break through the shadowy liquid of Megumi's domain. The faces of Maki, Megumi, Nanami, and Naobito, as the narrator talks about them directly. The reflection of the glasses. The one that has left it all behind, Toji, enters the domain. This was much, much better than last week, and I'm glad that this iconic manga scene was done justice in the anime. Toji's agility and speed is something that isn't easy to capture. He's faster than most characters in the verse, and it isn't due to a technique like projection sorcery, rather through raw physical ability. So it's quite hard to sort of depict him as faster than normal, but not because of a technique. It's a fine line, and I think Mappa did a really good job throughout the entire season. The brutal assassination of Gojo, the step towards Ogami that left even sound behind, and now this instant transmission ass move to just appear in front of Maki before snatching away Playful Cloud. One of the most physically strong characters was effortlessly tossed meters into the air by Toji. The hole in the domain is now closed, and they have to put their faith in this mysterious man that no one other than Naobito seems to know. Granny Ogami had died, so how is Toji still able to move around? Given that his body contains absolutely zero cursed energy, the normal weakness of the technique, that being once the grandson in this case runs out of cursed energy, the technique would dispel, this no longer works. Now, Toji remains as a puppet of carnage, baring his fangs towards the strongest around. Basically, it's a feature, not a bug. Dagon thinks nothing of Toji and launches a half-assed attack at him, but Toji just rips through it with Playful Cloud, parting the sea in half, before launching Dagon through the water. And we cut to OP. After the OP, Keiichiro Watanabe returns once again. This guy has given us some of the best looking action animation in the series, and he once again cooks up a 5-star meal with this scene of Toji absolutely thrashing Dagon around. Dynamic movement, fantastic expressions, and some very, very clean choreography, he just doesn't miss. This entire fight has been extended in the anime, and for the better. So far, it feels like almost every single anime-only scene has been incredibly solid in Season 2. And this one isn't any different. Toji catching the fish with his mouth, this underwater POV as he runs over it and makes short work of Dogon's piranha, and an entirely new sequence of Toji being dragged into the depths before he emerges and decimates Dogon's strongest and hardest Shikigami. Dazed and severely weakened, a blurry image of the man hunting him is all Dogon can see. As his eyes rest for the briefest of moments, he comes closer, and closer once more. Dogon is able to react and call forth a barrier of water, but unlike Naobito, Maki, and Nanami, Toji is in a different league. He pushes through the water wall, pulls a Gojo as he weaves over and around Dogon before putting him in a lock and caving his face in. As if this wasn't bad enough, a grinding sound fills the air as Toji sharpens the playful cloud into an even deadlier weapon. Dogon realizes he's screwed so long as his sure hit isn't in play, so he leaps into the air to cover some distance. But Naobito gets revenge for his arm and holds him in place. Toji charges right at Dogon, stabbing him through the brain once, twice, 3 times, 30 times, 50 times. The domain falls, and Dogon starts turning into dust. Their common enemy has been taken care of. But where does that leave them? It leaves them at hitting the like button and the subscribe button. That's where. Sorry, moving on. Megumi gets dragged out of the station without even realizing it. The delivery from the voice actor here, I don't know, it stood out to me. I have no idea why, but just the way it's like kind of quiet and he just says, huh? Was so real, like I don't even know why, I fuck with it. Also, Toji is apparently faster than Sukuna. Power scalers go wild with that statement. I think in the manga, he's only comparing him to the detention center, obviously. Now, if I don't know anything, what is it that I do know? Well, it's that these guys are beyond screwed now because Jogo is here. Jogo gets memed on a little bit because he talked a lot of shit and then lost his one fight in the series so far. But here, he showcased the true meaning of Special Grade Curse. Not only do they immediately recognize him to be on a completely different level to Dogon, but we're shown him just tearing through all 3 of the remaining sorcerers. Nanami gets blitzed, Maki gets blitzed, Naobito gets blitzed. Well, he actually manages to surprise Jogo. I use the word surprise very loosely, by the way. He activates his technique and goes for the counterattack, but the 2 beams of fire erupt behind him, stopping him in his track. I like this little detail of Naobito's technique backfiring, actually, no pun intended. The fire Jogo shoots out breaks the flow of Naobito's projection sorcery, causing him to freeze in place, making him take Jogo's attack in full force and potentially stopping him from ever having had a chance to counter. The explanation from the manga was taken out in the anime. In the manga, it tells us that Naobito was the fastest sorcerer, but that was when he had both of his arms. Not really important, makes sense that they cut it out. Just a little bit of information. The more you know, right? Toji's a menace, but I do think it's time we talk about the number 1 menace. The mere presence of not Sukuna, but his fingers alone being unsealed is enough to make Jogo sweat as he beelines it to where Itadori is. He's being fed Sukuna's fingers from Nanako and Mimiko. Jogo burns them alive and unravels the fingers under his possession, feeding them one after the other to Yuji. These 2 brats are still alive thanks to their curse technique, but Joe Goat is unamused and goes to kill them once more. He lifts his arm up. I haven't talked about the music much in a while, so let's just bring that back a little bit. The track that plays when Sukuna finally takes full control is haunting, and the sheer aura that this man displays is incomprehensible. We just saw Jogo take out 2 grade 1s and a Maki without so much as a worry. Yet here he is, Scooby-Dooing away the moment Sukuna's back in control. The entire next sequence is sick. Sukuna slowly walking towards them, the music building and building, the anticipation and fear in their faces. Sukuna stops and says, "Your head is a little high, don't you think?" Instinctively, they know what he means. They all kneel. Jogo foolishly doing so only on one knee as a slash barely misses his entire head. Sukuna is menacing, and this episode did him justice. The fear he instills in people, regardless of their strength, is crazy, and the mercilessness at which he dices up the 2 girls is frightening. No one is safe in this universe. To make matters worse, if Jogo can land a single hit onto Sukuna, he would be squarely allied with the Disaster Curses and Fei Geto. The question we're now left wondering is, can Jogo actually do it? Fantastic episode, and a very nice bounce back from last week. Next one should be even crazier. I think I heard that it has like the nuttiest staff list of the season so far, so hopefully they've gotten ample time to make it look good because it's a big one.
In the red corner, a short king with a hot head, decimator of 3 fraud sorcerers and a bunch of civilians. Ladies and gentlemen, the king of curses, Jogo. And in the blue corner, a jobless bum with tattoos and a thing for kids, I present to you the King of Frauds, Sukuna!
Two colossal titans of the Jujutsu Kaisen universe finally face off in a matchup nobody wanted. But not for what you might think. The real reason is that we all knew if a fight between these two were to ever break out, the memes that emerged from the ashes of Sukuna's body after Jogo zero diffs him would never die down. A domain that would burn any ordinary bum to a crisp the moment they entered it. Sound attacks that had even Gojo sweating, and omnidirectional fire that can be launched from a distance. Okay, I'm sorry, I can't. Jogo fans, I can't. This is as far as I can peddle the Joe Goat agenda. I leave the rest in your hands. This fight was never going to be fair. Back in season 1, Fake Geto specifically told Jogo that he's at about 8 or 9 finger Sukuna level, so to expect Jogo to actually win this 1v1 versus the 15 finger version, yeah, it was a long shot to say the least. Jogo doesn't just get memed on because he lost to Gojo twice, but because his only other major fight is against the fraud himself. And it doesn't go so well. His main goal is to land one solid hit, and he just can't do it. He throws everything at Sukuna, but I am getting ahead of myself. You're here to like the video, subscribe, and listen to me break down this fight, so let's just start from the top. To get to Jogo and Sukuna, we first have to make our way through Megumi vs Toji. Despite the hype of the former, this confrontation of father and son is actually really powerful, narratively. I'll make a video talking about Toji's importance in the story at some point in the future, but for now, I really like the way MAPPA has improved upon and extended Gege's vision for the character. During Hidden Inventory, Toji's seen as a flat-out terrible father with no real redeeming qualities. Gene freaks would be proud, but I digress. He forgets that he even has a son, not remembering his name, only to do so when he's done packing up Geto. The guy forgot that he's the one who named him. And when Gojo takes a bite out of his torso with hollow purple, his last words to Gojo are that Megumi is to be sold in the coming years, to the Zenin clan no less. At that point in time, Toji was a shitty person who abandoned and sold his child for money that, let's be real, he was likely going to spend that on gambling. His sacrifice in this episode obviously doesn't atone for his shitty behavior, just like Gene's meeting with Gon, but it does add depth to his character in a good way, I think. Speaking of adding depth, the anime decided that those few pages of Megumi versus... Okay, sorry. Not Megumi, Toji. Those few pages of Toji were not enough, and added almost half an episode's worth of new action. Toji continues his demon timing when it comes to speed blitzing everyone, and a chase scene where he straight up Jotaro's Megumi by pulling up to where he was headed before he does, only to beat his ass with one hand. Megumi, and by extension his technique, can't even touch Toji. He takes one step to destroy the ground, to destroy the footing of the rabbits, and create a debris field, which he then uses as makeshift bullets. It does not get more anime than this. Okay, maybe it does. I mean, Megumi just gets bullied in this version. Gets kicked into a car, launched into the air, almost crushed by a truck, then has a drain gate thrown at him, and then another truck. Toji, please, let my man breathe. On the plus side, Megumi has always been one of the smarter fighters in JJK. He doesn't rely on brute strength, and using the fact that Shoko is in Shibuya to his advantage, he correctly deduces that a long-form fight versus Toji just isn't feasible. He needs to end this as soon as possible, even if it means taking direct damage to his body. Using the rabbits as a distraction and the water as a conductor, Nue launches a lightning attack that explodes the office Toji was just at, giving Megumi some time to make distance between the two. Thankfully, Megumi gets out of there and his plan can actually unfold. Hiding in an alleyway, Toji's possibilities for attack have basically become one singular direct strike exactly down the middle. The bunnies turn back into shadow, trapping Toji's foot, causing the attack to miss a vital spot. Megumi grabs hold for the counter, but Toji's already escaped his grasp. Recognizing something within Megumi, Toji has a flashback to the time he made that deal with Naobito, the head of the Zenin clan. If Megumi would grow up to possess an inherited technique, Toji would be rewarded with 10 million yen. He walks away, seemingly unhappy with the trade offer. Back in the present, he asks Megumi what his name is. Upon hearing that Megumi had kept his name Fushiguro and not Zenin, Toji realizes that the words he left with Gojo had actually worked. In his last moments, he chose his son over his own greed, and it paid off. Megumi wasn't sold to the Zenins, and we get to see that, in the end, he really did care for his son. A shitty father whose love for his son supersedes Ogami's technique, allowing for Toji to end his own life, sparing Megumi. His body transforms back to the grandson, and Megumi is left wounded, alone, and confused, wondering who that guy really was. A great send-off to one of Jujutsu Kaisen's best characters, with the anime elevating it to a new level through music, great voice acting, and character animation. And with that, Toji Fushiguro passes away for good this time. Kusakabe and Panda are cool. What, you actually care? Fuck that, because we've got Jogo versus Sukuna, baby. Jogo versus Sukuna is finally here, and wow. I'm writing this script as I watch the episode with my friends, and I'm simply stunned. As far as animation is concerned, this is the single best animated fight so far in Jujutsu Kaisen, in my opinion. The smears, these haunting impact frames, the actual choreography, everything in this episode is top notch. They managed to really sell the difference in fighting style between Gojo and Sukuna, which I think is intentional. Where Gojo messed around and half-heartedly threw techniques at Jogo, Sukuna went for the jugular. Jogo might as well be in a horror movie with the way Sukuna is being portrayed here, constantly hidden in shadow, his face only visible the moment before he strikes, smeared and expressive faces, a loss of limbs every time he hears Sukuna's maniacal laugh. If Jogo hadn't done what he did to Maki and Nanami, I might have felt bad for him here. Once again, the extra scenes that the anime has been adding continue to impress, and this fight is the best example of that in my opinion. The way Sukuna flies into view and this creepypasta ass in between fills the screen for a split second. Jogo actually attempts to use his Ember Insects as he launches a hellstorm of fire bullets at Sukuna. My guy Pack-a-Punched his RPD and unloaded the entire magazine and still missed every bullet. The heat continuing to rise within the city as Jogo flies around, chasing Sukuna, who's so unbothered he simply walks around this hallway while waiting for Jogo's lava attack before darting out of the window, blocking the sneak attack and still managing to fillet Jogo into pieces while he does it. With no arms to cast his technique, Jogo thinks with his head and aims it at Sukuna, firing a Kamehameha of fire that vaporizes a hole in the building in front of him. Sukuna grabs him by his clothes and tosses him miles away before flattening the top of his head from Mount Fuji to... I'll just leave it at that. As his ears begin to ring and Jogo wonders why the hell he even tried this, I think bro should have just been a baker or something instead. His anger reaches a boiling point as the cans around him begin to combust from the fiery anger and frustration he's feeling. Maybe the floor is lava wasn't a game back in Sukuna's day, but when you can literally cut fire, I guess it isn't really that important. Jogo takes a moment to play Sonic Riders because it's probably the last time he's gonna have fun in this world. His beams of lava continue to get diced by Sukuna, and I want you to look at the damage that Jogo is causing here in the city. And I want you to tell me, who the fuck was gonna beat this guy now that Gojo is sealed in Shibuya? Let that sink in. Pillars of lava continuing to rage on as Sukuna effortlessly weaves through them, and the level of precision he has with his technique is on full display when he's slicing these tiny ass flies while also dodging all of the lava that Jogo can muster. Did you let that sink in, by the way? Because this man made giant lava hands and collided two tall ass buildings together. So again, who other than Sukuna or Gojo is beating this guy in Shibuya? And just look at this character animation. Oh my god, it's just so damn expressive. I just love the line width variation in these drawings. It makes it all that more expressive. And this dismantle that slices the lava building and limb right as this man T-poses on Jogo before ragdolling him around. I thought I was in Naruto when I saw this shot of Sukuna running and kicking Jogo up in the air. And I talked about the shadows earlier because look at how Sukuna's face is shrouded in darkness before coming into view as he full sends Jogo through another building, crushing his jaw in the process and taking us to this iconic panel, which once again was elevated in the anime. Personally, if I got lifted up by my collar like this, I would not let it slide. I love that we actually get to see the formation of Maximum Meteor as Sukuna slides around using Dismantle, all with a smile on his face because I think this man knew exactly what he was about to do. As he pulls up on Kusakabe, Panda, and these randoms, he had these people so scared that they'd rather take their chances with the meteor that wiped out the dinosaurs over disobeying Sukuna's order. If that doesn't do a good enough job at showing you just how differently constructed Sukuna is compared to other villains in recent years, I don't know what will. Jogo's strongest attack ended up not even hitting Sukuna, and outside of using his domain, Jogo has given it his all and still hasn't landed a single solid hit. Sukuna even asks him, why haven't you expanded his domain? But, as per Sukuna's words, Jogo is thinking like a loser because of his previous experience against Gojo. Sukuna's technique isn't only cleave and dismantle. Jogo assesses the situation before him as the King of Curses pulls out flames that burn even brighter than his. This being his final chance, the two shape their techniques and stare each other down. You just hate to see it, right? Whenever you hard cut into either a flashback or some random white or black abyss, you know that that person got godded, and godded did Jogo get as he says his last farewells to Hanami and Dagon. But not before Sukuna invades this limbo-esque place and earnestly recognizes Jogo's strength. Jogo sheds a tear before we're thrust back into reality, his body burned to a crisp from Sukuna's flames. Sukuna looks at Jogo with an expression reminiscent of Goku's back on Namek before calling out to Uraume, who had come and bowed behind him. This mysterious character that we'd seen back in Season 1 for the first time somehow is connected to Sukuna himself. The scene shifts one last time to Megumi, bloody and out cold as a monstrous figure walks toward the #1 loser in JJK. And with that, the episode comes to a close. Whew. Who can we thank for this week's feast? Outside of everyone involved in this episode, I think the legendary Itsuki Tsuchigami definitely deserves the focus of this video. He's worked as a key animator in Little Witch Academia, Chainsaw Man, Attack on Titan, and of course, Mob Psycho 100, so big props to him and his team. I'm not big on knowing names of, individual animators, so if you want to know more about that, make sure to check out Probably Pretentious for when he undoubtedly does the review for this week's animation. He knows way more than me, or you can just go on Twitter. Animators usually will post sort of the cuts that they did, so go thank them for their amazing work. And yeah, this episode was just straight fire through and through. Anyway, awesome animation, awesome music, awesome everything. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you all next time. Sukuna vs. the Divine General is here, and it was something else. I feel like a broken record, but with every new episode, the animation staff over at MAPPA continue to impress. And it isn't just them. Sound engineers, voice actors, background artists, practically everyone on the ground working this season is doing a stellar job, and this episode feels like the peak of all that labor so far. However, today we're not only going to be talking about this episode, because I'll also be going over the recent MAPPA controversy towards the end for a while, so make sure you stick around for that. But first, the fight and this episode was unbelievable. To go from last week, which was already phenomenal to me, to now this? I'm just gonna be honest, it's mind-blowing. Makura, or more commonly known by the community as Mahoraga, is Megumi's 10th and final Shikigami. 10 Shadows users like Megumi begin their journey with a starter Pokemon. The first Shikigami, Divine Dogs. To catch more Pokemon, they are able to initiate a ritual and summon the other 9 wild Shikigami. The user has to defeat them alone in order to properly tame them. While they need to be defeated alone, if the ritual is started with other people present, it will continue until either the Shikigami is defeated, nullifying the ritual, or until everyone present dies. This fact is why Megumi has tried to summon Makura at every single minor inconvenience, because to him, as long as he takes the enemy with him, it's worth it. Haruta is stuck in the ritual while Megumi is on 0 rings and in a suspended state of death. Sukuna makes the save on Haruta precisely because he doesn't want the ritual to end, even if he doesn't know that that's what would happen. If Megumi dies, whatever plan he's been conjuring would likely go down the drain. The summoning sequence itself for Makura was stellar. The way the cocoon quivers as the chains break, the wings springing out, and the towering giant fully emerges, killing Megumi in one strike. Sukuna squares off with Makura, and to be honest, MAPPA has been upscaling JJK characters in this season, especially during the extra anime-only scenes. This fight was only a couple of chapters long in the manga, but the anime has extended to be roughly half the episode. The scope and scale of this fight overshadows even that of Jogo vs. Sukuna, and I'm all here for it. Buildings collapse, planes explode, cranes and city blocks are torn to shreds and used as ammunition. A Shikigami with the ability to adapt to all phenomena, a true punching bag for Sukuna to finally get to enjoy himself. Where Jogo couldn't land a hit, Makura strikes first with its Blade of Extermination, a blade enveloped in positive cursed energy, and if Sukuna had been a cursed spirit, he'd get annihilated on the spot. Sukuna quickly counters and lands a dismantle, and the two send each other flying. Sukuna gets up first, but not before getting a drink and some popcorn. He quickly throws it away before launching another dismantle and two go at it. Makura drags Sukuna around like Broly did Goku in the movie, before throwing him into a building and then lunging at him. As the fight continues, Makura continues to grow more and more monstrous, chasing Sukuna around. In the manga, Makura never retracts its blade, but in the anime they've given it that option and it works so well. Now, instead of it only being able to slash things with its sword hand, Makura can go Hulk mode. Hulk mode, however, isn't enough because Sukuna is too nimble and he cuts Makura into pieces like he did Jogo. However, Makura isn't Jogo and it can actually fight back as it launches an air blast, sending Sukuna flying before it catches up to him. The two trade blows in a perfect JoJo's reference, and I love the way the slashes continue to rip apart the building. A cool display of his technique as well as a nice nod to Makura's adaptation before it being fully revealed. The anime continues to impress with its usage of the setting. Sukuna using wires to tie Makura up, Makura throwing cars, and then Sukuna kicking that car back alongside a massive dismantle to chop Makura's head in half. That's when we hear the very first gong. Makura's wheel has spun, and the first adaptation has been completed. Sukuna realizes that it did something, and the two immediately get back to it. The rumble of their battle felt by everyone in the vicinity. Buildings being flung around as Sukuna gets launched once again, this time inside a building full of cowering civilians as Makura crashes in. The idea to show Sukuna slashes as black in the anime is very good because I think it helps viewers see what he's actually doing with his curse technique. More on that in a bit. Makura ends up being laid out flat, but he gets up almost immediately, and we finally see Sukuna use his second mouth. In the manga, Gege showcased this cover, which I'm not sure if the anime will touch up on it, so minor spoiler. Skip ahead about 5 to 10 seconds if you want absolutely zero spoilers. This is Sukuna's Hei and Arrow form, and as you can see, he has 2 mouths. Moving on. Mahora gets ping-ponged and black sludge oozes out of it. The gong echoes once more, and this time, the slashes aren't enough to stop Mahora's attack, as the two end up outside. Sukuna uses his surroundings once again as he renders Mahora unable to move. Another gong. Now, Mahora is able to pull aside buildings as it instinctively charges at Sukuna before tossing a whole-ass train at him. The train gets cut into ribbons, and once again we see the shape of Sukuna's slashes. For the first time in the fight, Sukuna is surprised twice. First, Mahora is attacking him with cursed energy, then once again, it uses the train to somehow stop his slashes. Mahora gets even bigger somehow, so let's get into that real quick. In the manga, Mahora has never been stated to just have the ability to become bigger or smaller. But even in the manga, its size is ever changing, so my guess is that it's most likely just a creative liberty that the manga and the anime make to make the fights more interesting. And more interesting does the fight become because not only is this entire second half amazingly choreographed, but also a feast for the eyes. Civilians continue to get killed in the heat of battle, as Sukuna maniacally laughs upon understanding that Mahora can see his curse technique. Just look at this cut of animation. Holy shit. Mahora gets diced into pieces, but it heals fully once again, and we get this sick cut where it throws another building miles away. This shot of Sukuna sitting on the traffic lights as the screens in the background are also mirroring him. He not only slices the incoming building in pieces, but also us and the camera as well, and then he poses. Twice now he's done something like this. How does bro know we're watching, first of all? And then a plane crashes? I mean, Sukuna has absolutely no chill because my guy rips out the wing of that crashing plane and uses it to whack Mahora into a pool of water before impaling him with an antenna tower. Mahora is trapped and starts drowning. The adaptation takes place once more, and this incredibly smooth cut of Sukuna cutting Mahora repeatedly along with the city behind it. Realizing that Mahora is continuously adapting to his technique, Sukuna brings out true jujutsu. A truly divine technique requires truly divine animation. This is easily the single best looking domain expansion in the series, and it is incredibly fitting that the King of Curses himself holds that title. This is also one of the finest cuts of animation. The black shrouding his face, the immaculately expressive animation of his hands as he gets ready to make the domain, that damned smile, the way Megumi bleeds into the shadows, and finally, the domain itself. As if painting on air itself, Sukuna's domain is projected right in front of Mahora. The way Sukuna's hair flows as his expression changes from a smile to a frown, then once again a laugh as he recognizes the true potential in Mahora. Mahora, having almost entirely adapted to the technique, walks past the onslaught of slashes. Sukuna's hands begin to glow red, and he's shrouded in fire. The lights flicker as the heat from Sukuna's fire reaches its apex. An arrow even more powerful than that used to end Jogo, Mahora is defeated. Yuji's finally able to take control over his body once more, but all that lay before him is the absolute devastation that Sukuna has caused. Memories flash in his mind, Mimiko and Nanako, the people of Shibuya, Kusakabe and Panda. Everything floods his mind, and Yuji's soul shatters. Junya Inoki, Yuji's voice actor, absolutely killed it with the delivery in these lines. You can really feel the despair that Yuji is also feeling at this moment. The episode started with his grandfather telling him to save people, and now all Yuji can think of himself is that he's become a murderer. He gathers himself in whatever way he can, choosing to move forward. Wow. Words cannot describe how amazing this episode was. However, words can describe how big of a piece of shit MAPPA the company is, so let's talk about that real quick. If you haven't heard, MAPPA animators have taken to Twitter and aired out a ton of grievances towards the Jujutsu Kaisen project. Not enough time, mediocre pay, and no appetite from the higher-ups to make their lives easier. Here are just a few of those tweets. I'm seriously deflated, nothing's fun anymore, I can't stand it. Arai Kazuto, director and storyboard artist of Jujutsu Kaisen Season 2, Episode 13. I'll just leave you with the word scum. Main animator Kato in a now deleted tweet. Ukubo Shunsuke, director of Episode 12, tweeted this image out. If you've ever seen Shirobako, you probably get it, but for those of you who don't know, in the story this character is an animator, and Shirobako is about the animation industry. It's been a while, but I don't believe it paints it in the best of lights. Ultimately, us viewers don't actually have much we can do, especially us Western viewers. This is an issue that the entire animation industry faces, MAPPA just happened to be extra bad. The work culture in Japan doesn't do them any favors either, and without knowing squat about Japanese labor laws, I can't imagine that they're any help as well. However, what we can do is shift how we engage with these shows. Instead of praising MAPPA, praise the animators themselves. Follow them on Twitter, give them words of encouragement, and understand that they're the victims in a very shitty cycle. In the pinned comment, I'll leave a bunch of Twitter handles from various animators linked. Feel free to reply with others that I've missed. And going forward, I try to do this in all my videos, but sometimes I get carried away. I will do my best to praise the people actually working on the show rather than MAPPA as a whole. This episode was only as incredible as it was because of them, and I hope you enjoyed this week's video as well. And I'll see you all next time. To say I wasn't looking forward to making this video is, well, an understatement and a half. Nanami is by no means my favorite character in the show, but of all the deaths we get throughout the anime, his will always hit the hardest. Let's talk about it. We find ourselves following Yuji, as various words from different people in his life rush through his mind. Assurance, fear, doubt, all these different emotions well up inside Yuji as he makes his way towards the station. This sequence is very quiet, with only the overbearing hum of electricity in Yuji's labored breaths, something they probably should have done last week instead of playing specials, but I digress. In concept and execution, this scene is fine and good, but part of me wonders if it's only as empty and quiet as it is because of the scheduling issues. I mean, Yuji isn't even on screen for most of it. Regardless, we jump ahead of Yuji and are greeted by a beach? Nanami's alone and at peace. I won't bore you too much with a play-by-play for this portion of the episode, because it's too good and probably my favorite part of the episode. Juxtaposing the tranquil seaside view and Nanami's peace of mind to his current predicament was genius and largely absent in the manga. Calmly walking with a smile on his face, this esteemed and accomplished sorcerer is finally getting a moment of rest. Nanami had faced trials and tribulations in the past as a sorcerer. With Haibara's death, he'd become a salaryman and lived a life devoid of meaning. And now, finally back to the world he left behind, he goes past a wooden shed, like many you'd find at a beach, and we're quickly thrust back into reality. The sandy beach, now a dirty and abandoned subway, the trees swapped with shuttered stores, closed to celebrate Halloween, and this empty shed, a photo booth in the real world, with Mahito hiding inside. Nanami had walked past him without even noticing. Back in Season 1, Mahito received the biggest jumping in Jujutsu Kaisen at the hands of Nanami and Yuji. So, this time around he came back with his tail between his legs and brought his big brothers alongside him. Nanami versus the transfigured humans is a tough watch. While a touching piano medley plays in the back, we alternate between a fictitious Malaysia and dreadful reality. He gets beaten and bruised, pushed and shoved. All the while we keep jumping to and from. Reality to imagination and back. And when Nanami finally kills all the transfigured humans and gets the briefest moment of reprieve, Mahito's right there behind him. Checkmate. In my opinion, Nanami is one of the most important characters in Jujutsu Kaisen. For viewers, he serves as a great example of what it means to be a grade 1. He's the opposite of Gojo, serious and unwavering. He does his work and he does it well. And in the world of Jujutsu itself, he's reliable, strong, and to a character like Yuji, a mentor. He fills a void that even Gojo can't, being competent. Gojo slander aside, Nanami is important, and his death scene hits even harder because of that. We met him early in Season 1, saw bits of his past in hidden inventory, and now we see his end in Shibuya. I love the way Haibara was drawn here with these pencil markings to shade him in. He points at Yuji, but Nanami refuses to become a curse for him. Instead of uttering words like avenge me or kill Mahito, he simply chooses to say, you've got it from here. His body is transfigured and destroyed right in front of Yuji, a ruthless send-off to one of the most beloved characters in Jujutsu Kaisen. As a quick intermission, here's my anime-only friend's reaction to the death.
Dude.
Bastards, all of them.
It's fine, Yuji is gonna come and save him. He cannot die. Josh the dog. Yo,
Junya Inoki, Kenjiro Tsuda, and Nobunaga Shimazaki must have had Red Dew this week, because their performances here are amazing. For Tsuda, his delivery of Nanami's "I've done enough" line was chef's kiss. Yuji's pained expression was elevated by Inoki's desperate performance, as Yuji realizes what comes next. And with what comes next, you can feel the rage in Yuji's scream. Mahito's scream is different. It's full of life and playfulness as he yells back at Yuji that he can hear him quite clearly. I love Mahito as a villain, and what he does later, creating that little mini Junpei only to kill it off, is ruthless. Mahito is Yuji, and Yuji is Mahito. Not only is the rage clear in Yuji's voice, but in the demeanor and actions as well. He runs towards Mahito, but he's so tunneled on him, he ends up tripping over twice on the way there. This fight is the one I've been looking the most forward to ever since Season 2 got announced. And while it's not been on the same level as the previous two so far, there are still things I like. With Yuji's soul shattered, he can't even bring himself to punch the transfigured wall Mahito had planted in front of him. He focuses on defense, but Mahito sneaks him and lands a punch that sends him flying, leaving a deep gash on his forehead. The standoff here is really cool in concept. The walls literally closing in as Mahito's transfigured monstrosity pushes itself into them. The space gets narrower and narrower, and when Mahito goes for a strike, Yuji releases his knees and uses the momentum to hit Mahito with a manji kick. The two go back and forth, and it ends with them doing the anime thing of walking parallel to each other, and round 1 ends. Seriously, how does this work? They're like walking normally, but everything else is like in slow motion? Anyway, I've seen people in my comments complaining about not being able to make out what was happening last week or the week before that during the fights, but this portion for me personally was a lot more difficult. The dark lighting and, snappy animation looked a little jank to me. Like this shot of Yuji kicking Mahito down had some cool keyframes, but the follow through the actual motion and line of action is kinda hard to follow or just non-existent. The compositing for this wall also was a little jank, but I've said this before, when you give animators and artists no time to do their best work, this is what you're gonna end up with. This episode has issues, and as always I'll never blame the animators themselves, but I can't sit back and pretend like there are not glaring flaws looking directly at me. Broken animation that is hard to follow because something feels like it's missing. Bleeding because not enough time was given to make sure the drawings were consistent. Long shots with weak drawings that dragged on for way too long just to pad airtime. Bad compositing that I thought we'd left behind in Season 1. And this nauseating slow motion just to further pad that airtime. Alright, that's all the hating I'll do. Again, I don't want to dog on people least deserving of it. Round 2 is a little better. Anime only scenes continue to be a treat, like when he turns his lips into a sword after trying to kiss Yuji. I love the way that they've been expanding on Mahito's arsenal because of all the characters in the show, he is one of the most versatile fighters. The entire elevator scene was good, and I'll always fuck with the Jajangten references. One thing I don't like is that Yuji kinda teleports. How did he get out of the elevator? And here, why does he just show up mid-vault over the signs? I know in a technical sense we don't need to see it, but to me this screams that we don't have enough time to do everything. Regardless, Mahito is plotting something, and we swap scenes one last time. Okay, I lied. We get a quick intermission showing us how Mahito got ahead of Jogo by splitting himself in two and planting a wall there. Cute scene, doesn't fit the mood, Mahito's still a bastard. And now for the actual final scene. Best girl Nobara is back, and even she realizes that she's been on fraud watch ever since her fight with Haruta. I like this redraw from her fight in Season 1, and the actual action animation that follows is good enough. And as always, drop kicks will never not be my favorite thing. It's only a short scuffle, but with my 530,000 IQ CPU brain, and my precognition abilities, I know that we're going to be seeing more from her in this fight next week. And that about wraps up the episode. It's okay, but again, given the time constraints, the fact that we even get okay is quite crazy. Anyway, will Nobara do something next week? Will Yuji finally kick Mahito's shit in? Find out next time on Dragon Ball. To say I wasn't looking forward to making this video is, well, an understatement and a half. Nanami is by no means my favorite character in the show, but of all the deaths we get throughout the anime, his will always hit the hardest. I really need to stop doing this to myself. Screw it, from today on, no more sensational titles that will just undoubtedly end up getting one up the very next week. Let's just talk about the here and now. Episode 19 is finally here, and wow. With last week's episode, the biggest enjoyment I got out of it was the absolutely stunning and gut-wrenching final stand from Nanami. The way the real world melted together with Nanami's imagination, the desperate yet peaceful piano medley, and of course, the resolution itself. That was a top moment for me so far in the series, and outright being more heartbreaking than that is not going to be easy. Jujutsu Kaisen isn't a stranger to sad moments, but unlike Junpei and Riko's deaths for example, Nanami's felt special. But they decided that it wasn't enough to traumatize us with just his death, and now with Nobara's as well. To get to that scene though, we're gonna have to talk about the rest of the episode first. I need to build up to it, okay? On a visual front, this episode was incredible, especially in its action animation, which is surprising given some of the struggles that the season has had so far on a production side of things. Nobara's portion at the beginning was surprisingly good. We had creative angles, fluid motion, and great use of color and lighting, which reminded me a lot of that Yuji vs Choso fight with some of these rim lights. Given that this was Nobara's last fight, it makes sense to give her this level of attention. God knows she needs it with her track record so far in Shibuya. Mahito, or more accurately his clone, was menacing as hell here. The glowy eyes throughout were a great touch, and the ways in which he contorts his body and uses his surroundings to attack Nobara was done really well. I love how absolutely demonic he looks in some of these shots, and the way he uses his body morphing abilities is always a treat to watch. Despite her wounds, our queen is built differently and continues to press on her attack, launching nails over and over again, with some connecting and others not finding their mark. Given that none of the good guys so far other than Yuji can hurt Mahito, he gets overconfident and lets his guard down. Following this really clean action sequence, Nobara knocks a nail into the ground, flipping the previously discarded ones over using her hairpin technique. The technique is once again activated, this time on the ground nails that are now pointing upwards. The cursed energy detonates again, piercing Mahito and holding him in place. Nobara leaps down, knocking Mahito into the ground and jamming another nail right on his forehead. This time, instead of hairpin, she uses resonance. The damage hits Mahito's soul directly, but given that the Mahito before her is only a clone, the damage done to him relays back to the original, just like it did back to Eso in Season 1. With the main Mahito taking direct damage to his soul, and by virtue of him being connected to himself, the damage is then rebounded onto the clone, giving Nobara an actual method to harm him. The clone realizes that Nobara is his natural enemy alongside Yuji, and we swap scenes to see the effect of resonance on the main body. In the middle of striking a blindfolded Yuji, the original Mahito's body takes massive damage. And realizing that what hit him was resonance, Yuji takes this opportunity and lands probably the meanest and the cleanest combo since Gojo's hate crime back in Jujutsu Kaisen 0. This beatdown of Mahito, first of all, I've been waiting for it, and the way the anime cooked with this one, I mean, it was everything I'd wanted and more. Despite the issues that have been made very, very clear every single week, the staff members that managed to squeeze out gold, regardless of these conditions, just salute to you. This brutal cut of Mahito getting absolutely pummeled is likely done by Kosuke Kato. You've seen him in Gojo vs Toji, Mahito vs Mekamaru, Sukuna vs Makura, and now Yuji vs Mahito, obviously. He once again cooks, and just this cut of Yuji's eyes glowing red with rage is amazing. These bold, expressive lines add so much to the overall movement of the scene, and the snappiness that Kato is known for here is on full display. Yuji just lands punch after punch and just kicks Mahito into a pillar without giving him a moment to breathe. He decks him in the face, caves in his stomach, and crushes his throat. These two money shots are also phenomenal, and I just love Yuji's expression and the contrasting colors in this one. And the smile that Yuji has as he's thankful for Kugisaki's help, it's all so good. The two of them shared a very touching moment back in Season 1, so seeing Yuji continue to reaffirm his love and respect for his friends does wonders for his character. Despite all the misfortune that Yuji has and is facing, so long as there are allies around him, he can continue living, for he is not alone. The music that plays during this portion is also incredible. I like all the music choices in this episode, but this one stood out the most to me. It's uplifting and calming, almost as if reflecting Yuji's state of mind at this very moment. Having realized that Nobara is there with him, his mind is clear and the objective becomes painfully obvious. Exercise Mahito as fast as possible. This song is definitely one I'll be adding to the playlist and using in future videos once the OST officially drops. It's just that good. Shifting gears back to Nobara, the clone Mahito decides to use the ultimate Joestar technique, and he runs away. Nobara chases, believing that exercising him here is the best course of action, a judgment that would soon prove to be fatal. Yuji is still beating Mahito's ass, but Mahito has recovered enough to split himself into mini-me's. He tricks Yuji into attacking the wrong one, and the real Mahito makes his body whole again and runs towards his double. With Nobara on the chase, the two Mahitos swap positions, and that one moment of hesitation on her end leaves her wide open. Well, I guess we're here, huh? Well, I'm here. You're also here. The like button is there, subscribe button is there, make sure to click it. Moving on. Last week, Nanami got a special imaginary sequence. This week, Nobara gets a whole flashback that lasts most of the episode. If there's one thing Gege is really good at, it's creating backstories that really help some of these characters. Hidden Inventory was great, and a short 2-chapter backstory of a later character in the series, it's still my favorite to this day. If you know, you know, no spoilers here. This flashback isn't groundbreaking or revolutionary, kind of like a lot of Jujutsu Kaisen to be honest. But what Gege excels at is using a lot of these pre-existing concepts that were pioneered by series like Hunter x Hunter or even Dragon Ball incredibly well within his own story. The flashback is sweet, true to her character, and gives us a little more depth and understanding of Nobara as a character. Now, if only he'd do this and not kill some of these characters, that would be great, thanks. Nobara has always been an energetic person, and it's not something that's changed even now. As a kid, she was strong and formidable, drop-kicking other shithead kids as if she was prepping for a Mahito fight 10 years early. And even from that early age, her mindset was set in stone. She thought of everyone back home as crazy and only ever opened herself up to a few people, Fumi and Saori. The Saori stuff is overall solid, I don't care too much for it, but the last moments of her wondering what Nobara is up to these days is just unnecessarily cruel from Gege. What I really want to touch on though is the chair scene. Back in chapter 63 of the manga, and I think the last episode of season 1, Nobara tells Yuji that, to her, unless you're her ride or die, you're just best not get in the way. Don't bother taking a seat on one of those chairs. This metaphor comes full circle this episode, with us seeing the likes of Gojo, Megumi, Panda, Maki, Inumaki, and of course, Yuji. Not only have they taken a seat in her life, somewhat abruptly or loudly, they even brought their own. Nobara even mentioned this to Yuji directly, but for us to finally see it is, well, pretty sweet and just really good, solid writing from Gege. Nobara is sad that she couldn't keep her promise to her childhood friend Fumi, but she also makes peace with the fact that, despite how forcefully some of these people planted themselves in her life, it wasn't all bad. Sometimes I wonder if, after finishing a chapter like this, Gege just kicks his feet up in the air and just laughs, Gold D Roger style, recognizing how much BS he's putting not only his characters, but the readers too. I mean, seriously, Yuji's pained expression as he meekly lets out Nobara's name after having had shouted it early so loudly. I mean, why was this necessary? Before we end it off, here's my anime-only friend's reaction to her death. This episode hurt, and we'll probably be seeing the aftermath of Yuji's mental health first thing next week. As always, thank you for watching, and I'll catch you all next time. We might have had a teensy-weensy, ever so slight hiccup last week, but Yuji was still beating the ever-living dog out of Mahito. I mean, it wasn't even a close fight, so surely we can continue that level of rampage this week too. Right? Did Mahito just hit a black flash? Gege, what the fuck? Continuing the trend of Mahito having anti-plot armor as a curse technique, this episode starts us off in the most deplorable of ways. Before we can get to any action, we first have to sit through a nice, happy, and wholesome episode. The gang, and by gang I mean Nobara, ruin Gojo's 250,000 yen shirt and proceed to try and fix this mess before he gets there. I love this episode. Seeing them happy and everything, being good friends and all of that, with Gojo showing up there at the end, right as the episode also ends. What? The episode ends there. To go from this super wholesome scene to Nobara limp and dead on the ground, to a POV shot of Yuji from her eye socket. Nah, that's foul. That's foul. I'm done. Yuji's breakdown is incredible. The character animation is top notch and the voice acting is absolute cinema. The manga panel did a great job showcasing Yuji's resolve breaking, but the anime took it to another level. Even though the narration was missing in the scene, and although I think it's kind of a bummer, you still get the picture without it, so I'm not that mad about it. What I am mad about though, is seeing this piece of shit land a black flash. Not only did he land a black flash, but the entire sequence of him doing so was incredibly clean. I can't even hate it. But seriously, it was way more impressive than it needed to be for a piece of trash like Mahito. Memes aside, this is one of my favorite scenes in the Shibuya arc. Black Flash has never been a technique unique to sorcerers, but with us only having ever seen characters like Yuta, Nanami, and Yuji do it, it kinda left that impression in our minds. Seeing Yuji land 5 Black Flashes during his fight against Hanami really cemented the fact that even if no one can use it at will, Yuji is one of a kind, and his usage of the technique made it look like he might as well have had that ability. Yet, 65 chapters and 19 episodes since we last saw it, it isn't Yuji that lands the first Black Flash, instead it's the most detestable of curses. A curse born of humans, Mahito invades the realm of the strong. The sparks of black do not choose who to bless. This was, in my opinion, a brilliant decision from a writing point of view. For Yuji, this is the height of despair during the Shibuya operation. Coming out of a loss against Choso, the deaths of thousands at the hands of Sukuna, Nanami and Nobara's deaths, and now, finally, the one he hates the most barring Sukuna is standing above him, having bested Yuji at his own game. The neatest of bows tied to the steaming pile of despair. Mahito's speech is awesome. There's a reason people love him as a villain, and this speech perfectly encapsulates Mahito as a character. Selfish, with an overwhelming sense of self, Mahito only lives for his own purpose, becoming a true curse. He never cared about what's right or what's wrong. All that matters to him is that he fulfills this duty as a true curse. Kill humans, and evolve to reach the heights of Gojo and Sukuna. As if getting revenge for last episode, Mahito absolutely crushes Yuji, landing blow after blow, ragdolling him around pillar to pillar. And what really sells this scene, it just has to be the voice acting from Mahito. Nobunaga Shimazaki absolutely, unequivocally, 120% killed it with his performance. He's done such a fantastic job thus far, and this scene feels like the culmination and peak of the performance up until this point. The barrage of attacks ends, and Mahito raises his hand, forming it into a mantis claw. Preparing one final attack, he swings his arm, but the sound of the Gion Shoja temple bells echoes the impermanence of all things. The color of the Sala flowers reveals the truth that the prosperous must decline. But we are the exception. The GOAT of GOATs is back, baby. This is the kind of shit I want to see. Toho burst onto our screens back in episode 8 of the anime and chapter 16 of the manga. I've loved his character ever since he was first introduced, and now seeing him back in action has me hyped up beyond belief. Of all characters in Jujutsu Kaisen, Gege's handling of Toho has always been top tier when he's on screen. He gets the cool speeches, a wicked curse technique, the most energetic and hype OST in the anime, and of course, some of the most iconic moments in the story itself. This introduction had me floored when I first read it in the manga, and I'm glad they cooked in the anime as well. When Toho was first introduced, he came across as a meathead that only thirsts for battle, but as he's continued to show up more and more throughout the anime and manga, his character has continued to deepen and evolve, and he's become an incredible addition to the cast. I love that he's poetic, kind, and when you look at his character profile in the manga, Gege tells us that he's so hygienic that it makes the Kyoto girls jealous. He's an incredibly layered character with so much potential, so much so that I'm surprised Gege hasn't killed him off yet. Yuji continues to spiral in front of Toho, disgusted with his weakness and incompetence. Curled up on the ground, all Yuji sees in himself is a murderer and nothing more. As he meekly utters these words to Toho, Mahito charges at him, jeering for him to yell a little louder so that he can hear him properly. From telling Yuji that he could hear him loud and clear a couple episodes ago, to now telling him to speak up. Cruel, but effective. Toto's the GOAT, and he's not going to let his brother go out like that. So he uses his curse technique to create some distance between the three of them, and we get this fighting game-ass effect, which was super cool to see in my opinion. This speech from Toho is another banger, and I love the way it relates to the poem he recited just a few moments earlier. The point of the poem is to say that everything will eventually come to an end, but Toho adds, we are the exception to it. At first, it might sound like all he's saying is that he and Yuji are built different, but in reality, what he's talking about are sorcerers as a whole. Even though Nanami and Nobara's time has come to an end, their will lives on in those that choose to carry it. This is what allows Jujutsu sorcerers to continue living long after their death, and it's also what wakes Yuji from his slump, now realizing what he must do. Toho gives Yuji some time and assurance that he doesn't need to answer immediately, and charges at Mahito on his own. I haven't been able to find out exactly who did this next cut of Toho versus Mahito, but it gives me strong Ping Pong the Animation vibes, and I really love this style of animation, so you can already tell I was glazing this section as I was watching the episode. Mahito can't land even a single hit on Toho. Characters that can teleport always make for incredibly interesting fights. Sasuke whenever he gets to use his Rinnegan more than twice before running out of chakra, Shimazaki in general in Mob Psycho, and now Toho for JJK. It's an incredibly OP ability, but man is it fun to watch. Not fun for Mahito though, since he's getting his shit rocked. But because Toho can't actually deal damage to the soul, he's pretty happy to just get ready for his next strike. And as he makes an attempt to hit another Black Flash on Toho, we get a shot of Nanami from Yuji's perspective, telling him that he's got it from here. Finally understanding Toto's words fully, Yuji agrees to take on Nanami's suffering and lands the Black Flash of the series. A beautiful panel of Yuji and Nanami flashes before us, and Mahito is sent flying. Back from the brink, Yuji and Toho brace themselves for round 2. Dimming has been an issue plaguing JJK since the start, and it really sucks having to see such a beautiful cut of animation get undermined like this, but man, does it still look amazing when you turn the brightness up a little bit. The scene switches to Miwa, and we can finally breathe. I don't know why they cooked this hard for the Miwa scene, but man, they cooked really hard for the Miwa scene. The lighting was top tier, character animation was touching, the voice acting superb, and the overall direction of the scene was just really good. Mekamaru gets to say his final goodbye, and Miwa's cries echo in the train as the Kyoto students discuss their next course of action. Back to the fight, the anime continues to flex with anime original content as they swap settings not once, but twice. I mean seriously, this is incredibly interesting to see. The directing has been top notch this episode, and alternating between like 4 or 5 different color schemes throughout keeps the episode feeling fresh. Just look at Miwa in the train scene. It goes from this really cool blue to the bright lights after she leaves the tunnel, and then back to the blue. And here in the station, they go through different points. from yellow to blue to green and then back. Mahito tries to separate Yuji and Toho in order to limit the effectiveness of Boogie Woogie, but once again, Toho is built differently and just continues to evade every attack while also blocking Mahito's swing with his fingers. Hello? No choo-choo train can stop the brothers, however, as Toho kicks Mahito in the elevator, sending him upwards. He meets up with Yuji and the two instinctively understand each other and make a run for the upstairs. Toho and Yuji are incredibly in sync this episode, which is pretty insane to consider since their only team up was the first time they met when they jumped Hanami. To add to the brotherly team up, Yuji infuses a rock with cursed energy and absolutely slams it towards Mahito at Mach 500. Power scalers, eat your hearts out. Toho swaps places with the rubble and we get... I don't even know how to describe the scene. To me, it's just immaculate. It felt like I was watching Space Dandy the way Toho was flying on the screen. Beautiful animation, amazing effects work, and this little Toho face showing up was glorious. Takada's voice pushing him forward, the image of his brother flashing, and his own desire to not get left behind all culminates into Aoi Toho landing his very own Black Flash. That's good. Although Mahito has suffered no damage from the attack, Toho still landed a Black Flash. Just like Yuji and Mahito, the three have now reached 120% of their potential. If we're talking about most iconic manga panels, this one probably makes the top 5 of most lists. I mean, it's so damn good that they more or less just colored the original manga panel and called it a day. And to be honest, I wouldn't have it any other way. This scene was complete enough in the manga, and all that was needed to push it over the edge was a narrator. And did the narrator deliver? I got chills listening to her reading of the line, and I am really sad we didn't get the sparks of black, do not choose who to bless. Mahito launches another onslaught that sends them all to the surface, and round 3 is now underway. Alright, I've had enough. Since you're all so smart, and you just won't stop with the wait for next episode to use that title, or get ready to change the title. Yeah, you think you're so right, huh? Let's take a look at episode 21 then real quick. Oh, what else is there left to say? Every week, my mind gets blown away with the quality that we get in spite of all the hardships being continuously faced by the JJK staff. This episode was awesome, so let's just dive right in. No time is wasted as we immediately follow up from where we last left off. Mahito uses his transfigured humans to create an arena, and the final round begins. Seemingly not having learned his lesson, however, Mahito undermines Toho by only focusing his speech on Itadori. Toho and Yuji look each other in the eye and immediately lock in. Mahito is stuck in place and Yuji charges forward with a kick, but Mahito's one step ahead. He severs his head and turns himself into a parasite. No, like literally the parasites from the hit show Parasite from 2004. He also turns his little gremlin head into Bentaspo. Didn't know Mahito was cultured like that. For the first time in the episode, we get this black and white sequence, one of a few that we'll be getting later on. It's basically just showing Mahito's technique being activated as the narrator goes on in the background. It's a pretty cool looking scene and I really like this visual style. Hint, hint, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. The polymorphic soul isomer, I'm just going to call him Isomer for the rest of the video, is formed and pulls an armor titan as it charges at Toho. No, literally, it just sounds like the same footsteps that they use for the titans. Like with almost everything in Jujutsu Kaisen, give and take is a concept that you need to pay attention to because it affects everybody. Toho realizes this and quickly deduces the relative strength of the splits, 8-2. The parasite is the bigger troublemaker, a detail made a little bit more explicit in the manga, but shown indirectly in the anime instead. Toho prioritizes teleporting the stronger one away from Yuji, forcing the 20% Mahito to fight Yuji head on, leaving Toho to deal with the isomer. However, Toho miscalculated. Instead of the transfigured human being at a grade 3 or grade 2 level, its speed and attack were enough to send Toho flying through a building, far away from Yuji, as Mahito quickly reforms with his clone, bringing his body back to 100%. In the manga, Toho throws a rock to pull this Sasuke move, but the anime did a clothes hanger instead. Neat. The isomer is quickly defeated in one hit, and then it hits Toho. The isomer is only as strong as it is as a consequence of expending many souls at once. However, give and take, in exchange for that explosive strength, its durability was greatly lowered. Two more make their way towards Toho as he kisses the necklace. Another spoiler from the opening that we finally get to see in the anime proper. I talked about loving Toto's kindness in last week's video, and this character moment for him is another reason to, in my opinion, love the character. Despite these transfigured humans having already been long dead, Toho still apologizes for ending their lives. Despite being prime sorcerer material, he is still fully human. Yuji was fine against a 20% Mahito, but the fully realized version is too much for him to handle. Mahito's able to pile on the attacks and even sends Yuji flying into the anime barren wasteland. But Todo's already there to back his brother up. Running out of options, and with Todo's technique being burdensome, Mahito expands his domain. An all or nothing gamble, just like the one he got inspiration from a few hours prior. A domain expansion of 0.2 seconds. Expanding the barrier itself and then activating the technique simultaneously, a two-step process had been combined into one sublimely fast maneuver. A feat only possible due to his experience with Black Flash. Mahito is able to land the sure hit on Todo, avoiding Yuji, and by proxy, avoiding his own death at the hands of Sukuna. The second black and white sequence that follows when the domain activates is great. I love the style, as I said. Fading into white with the sparks of black symbolizing their importance on the feat, and of course, the four eyes of the strongest sorcerer in history, calling back to the first time Mahito actually invaded Sukuna's innate domain. His trick had worked this time, however, and Sukuna is left impressed, even smiling at Mahito. Todo had tried to activate simple domain, but Mahito was one step ahead. The damage began inflicting itself in Todo's arm and traveled upwards. Todo quickly cuts his arm off, but Mahito's already on the move. Unable to use his curse technique, he opts for another black flash, this time with this image flashing alongside the sparks of black. Todo had managed to minimize the damage, but a black flash is still a black flash. And now with the curse technique returned, Mahito goes for part 2. But just then... So, how am I even going to talk about this scene? I actually saw this scene on Twitter before I watched the episode. I had woken up from a bomb-ass nap, and although I was smiling the entire time looking at it, I was like 98.25% sure that this had to be a fever dream. I love it. I really always liked the quick pace of the manga in terms of this technique. It felt like when Todo pulled this off, it happened instantly and seamlessly. The flow reading it from page to page was never lost, and the sequence as a whole was, well, complete. This is definitely a different spin on it, as it takes us out of the action immediately and it makes us go, honestly, just WTF for a few moments before we quickly realize that it's just Todo being, well, Todo. And honestly, after having sat on it for a while I'm writing the script, I rock with it quite heavy actually. Gege has said in the past that the memories Todo gets with Yuji have nothing to do with some kind of technique on Yuji's end. Instead, it's just that Todo's weird. Outside of that and the necklace, I don't think Gege has ever dove that deep into this aspect of his character, but the anime staff took that little tiny character trait and amped it to the max. This scene perfectly encapsulates the weirdness that Todo has, as well as honestly just his kindness and love for his brother. He shares a spot in his necklace alongside Takada. Speaking of which, seeing her beat up Mahito alongside Todo in his mind has got to be top tier visual gag. The idol music in the background, the recreation of the volume cover, the two fighting in sync, and of course, the handshake itself perfectly transitioning into an incredibly smooth black flash. Peak cinema. Mahito is sent flying and Yuji runs after him, thanking Todo for everything. Todo lays down on the ground, his hand completely singed off by Mahito's technique. He closes his eyes, and his arm goes limp. Having previously landed a black flash, however, the shape of Mahito's soul had been revealed to him. The most prodigious character in the series, once again, goes even further beyond. Casting idol transfiguration on himself, an amalgamation of transfigured humans erupts out of him, and just as quickly as they came out, so too does Mahito. This was equally instant in the manga, and I personally really like the uneasiness the scene oozes with this move. Yuji stopped in his tracks, observing the new and improved Mahito. Instant spirit body of distorted killing. Cool name. Did it really need to have a light novel title length though? Sharp spikes protruding from his elbows, his face shielded by a plate of armor, cool ass tendrils flowing in the wind, and a tail just like Frieza. This is the true essence of Mahito's soul. Of all the characters in Jujutsu Kaisen, Mahito is one that has truly the most potential. He's only months old, yet has access to a domain, a busted technique, experience with Black Flash, and most importantly, the mindset of a true disaster. While the disaster curses themselves obsessed over becoming human, Mahito fully embraces his status as a curse, and this form is the culmination of all of that. All of that happened and we're still only at halftime, so like the video and subscribe, thanks. The fight that follows is great. Yuji's able to close the gap by better hand to hand, but the sheer difference in stats is too much for him to handle. His attacks have no impact on Mahito as he sits there and lets Yuji hit him. Just like with Choso, normal attacks will have no effect. For Yuji to win this fight and not end up like he did against Choso, he will need to hit Mahito with a Black Flash infused with the maximum of his curse energy. Yuji's face gets grabbed for the second time this season. Seriously, Yuji, you cannot let them keep disrespecting you like this, and gets thrown into sewage. His legs shaking, Mahito doesn't give an inch and dashes towards him. He readies his blade. However, having sustained a Black Flash right after expanding his domain, Mahito was also nearing his limit. And just like against Choso, Yuji steals his body, punching at his leg to keep it still in preparation for the final Black Flash. No one can use Black Flash at will, yet Yuji makes it seem that way. Mahito makes a note of this and darts around, looking for an angle. I would too if Yuji was looking at me like this. He comes up with a sound plan and rushes in. He lures Yuji into punching him, but at the last moment changes his body back to normal, fully reinforcing that area with cursed energy. Yuji lands his punch on Mahito's shoulder, and just when he thinks he's won, a delayed second impact. Divergent Fist is a technique that Yuji developed as a bad habit. After his fight with Choso, however, he had learned to control this technique at will. And at this very moment in time, Yuji had outplayed Mahito. The attack aimed at Yuji doesn't connect, and one of the hardest lines in JJK is then uttered by Toho, back from near death. Toho proclaims that an arm is merely a declaration. The act of applause is an acclamation of the soul. Predicting the switch, Mahito swoops around, but Yuji's nowhere to be found. The Boogie Woogie curse technique is dead. One final bait and switch from Toho, just enough for Yuji to land the best Black Flash of the series. If you'd asked me before the anime to rank the Black Flashes, this one would have probably still been my number one. So to see it done this incredibly well in the anime was an incredible treat to watch, and I don't think I could ask for better. The music, the animation, the effects work, the beautiful color, and the shapes of the lightning itself just makes it all come together to form my personal favorite Black Flash, not only visually, but also narratively. The final Black Flash on Mahito, from Yuji. With no more transfigured humans left, Yuji looks down on Mahito. I am you. I know I say this a lot, but this is a moment that pretty much every manga reader has been waiting for. The climax of the conflict between Yuji and Mahito. After the deaths of thousands at his hands, the deaths of Junpei, Nanami, Nobara, all of the suffering that has been caused by him, finally, Yuji gets his get back. The I am you speech is an incredibly important aspect of Yuji's character. Not only is it cathartic to us viewers to see him giving it to Mahito, without delving too deep into manga spoilers, this mentality of being a cog that only exists to exercise curses is one that will follow Yuji. Here, we get the continuation of his answer to Todo's question from last episode. Yuji's role as a sorcerer isn't simply to save lives, it is to exercise as many curses as it takes. And even if his actions don't have any meaning now, they might 100 years later. Massive props to Junya Inoki for his performance in this scene. He absolutely nailed it. And I don't think I can see anyone else doing this scene. Also, props to the director for not throwing in the opening. The snow scene was done justice and then some. I mean, Yuji had this guy quivering. He even started crying. The rabbits making their escape, see what I did there? Alongside Mahito from the pack of wolves led by Yuji. Mahito pathetically throwing snowballs to slow him down, merely balls of dirt in the real world. This rat fuck even sticks a rock in one of them, but Yuji keeps walking forward. Mahito's voice actor also nails the performance. I'd always envisioned Mahito simply screeching like a banshee at this point, but his take on it was amazing. Having Mahito essentially cry like a little bitch was an incredibly cathartic experience, and seeing him twist his ankle trying to run away from the big bad Yuji was equally great. I also like this anime-only scene of Yuji punting him away. Unfortunately though, he punts him right at Fake Geto's feet. The penultimate episode of Jujutsu Kaisen is finally here, and the end of my short-lived YouTube career also draws nearer. For the time being, however, let's talk about the dope shit that happened this week, because to be honest, I wasn't even expecting half of it. Funnily enough, this episode is one of the few episodes recently that has given us a moment to breathe. Following the rampage caused by the many battles fought all over Shibuya, the city is silent. No screaming, no murmuring, just cold concrete colliding onto itself and the short sparks of electricity inside the last light posts still standing. Panda is in gorilla mode now, likely an indicator for how he was able to actually survive Maximum Meteor, and he quickly spots Kusakabe. I originally interpreted this panel as Kusakabe kind of just chilling in the rubble, holding off the giant slab with his sword, basically keeping himself safe, but hidden. Kind of like when I'd go to the bathroom at work because my stomach hurt. Regardless, he's safe and not at all pleased with what just happened. Yuji should have been in control, yet how is Sukuna still able to come out? Kusakabe is even okay with Yuji getting the death penalty if Gojo isn't unsealed, and as much as you might want to tell this guy to get a grip or try to explain Yuji's situation, at the end of the day, Kusakabe doesn't know Yuji. This was likely his first interaction with him, so his reaction is more than justified. What isn't justified is this next scene. And look, I'm not gonna horny post, I'm not gonna joke about how lucky Wee Wee is or say that it should have been me and not him, but I'm not gonna defend Mei Mei here. This is undoubtedly peak degeneracy at the least, and some kind of grooming / power dynamic fuckery going on at the most. Soyness aside, this is unironically a kind of good character flaw that Mei Mei has, and I think the scene itself does a good job highlighting it. Okay, maybe it goes over the text a few times, but I think you get the idea. One of my previous assessments of Mei Mei was that I like her. I like her character because of her morally dubious nature. I kept it vague back in those episodes, but this here is the culmination of that. She is competent, she is strong, and she is on the side of the good guys, but she isn't a good person. Her brother's like a tool to her, only able to use Jujutsu with her permission. She actively sabotages the livestream back in season 1, likely on Gakuganji's order so that Yuji could be killed off without interference, and now she's abandoned the battlefield and is spending her night selling off her yen and other assets in preparation for the likely collapse of the Japanese market on account of Shibuya, even giving insider information to unnamed parties for more money. And arguably worst of all, she is chilling in Malaysia, the exact same country Nanami had wanted to go to at the end of his life. A despicable person is given the opportunity to enjoy her life in comfort, whereas someone outstanding and upstanding like Nanami gets his taken away all too soon. This scene in a vacuum is undoubtedly sus, but I think it helps flesh out the world of Jujutsu Kaisen and just paints a pretty grim picture of the state of the world, that someone like Mei Mei is considered a good guy, or good woman. Plus, I just really want to... Oh, what's this bright light? Oh, it's Choso having a mental breakdown as he keeps seeing Yuji in his mind. You're telling me this dude has been zooked out of his mind while everything else has been going on outside? Nevertheless, Choso makes his way out and is in search of Yuji. What is Yuji to him? I'll tell you what he isn't. Built for this next fight, Mahito has managed to scurry behind Fake Geto, and Yuji isn't gonna let that slide. He makes a run for Mahito, but a catfish-like curse is dropped into the ground, and its ability messes with Yuji's perception, causing him to fall over. Geto's mouth also isn't drawn here, which looks kind of funny, and the thumbnail says Yap Demon for a reason, because Fake Geto does not shut the f up. No, I do not care about your curses and your fighting style. I don't need the history lesson on the mid-Edo era, and I really don't care about the fact that Geto had the potential to beat Yuta back in Volume 0. Wait, he had the potential to do what? Suffice to say, Fake Geto is strong, and is very quickly showing the true strength that the original Geto should have realistically had. Unfortunately, we never got to see a modern era adult Geto, so all we have is the bum from Zero. I'm choosing to highlight Fake Geto's strength here because he is in the body of a special grade sorcerer. Who's a special grade sorcerer? Well, excluding Gojo obviously, Yuta's a special grade sorcerer and Yuki is one as well. Yuji is so close to the prison realm, yet in his current state he now has to face that fresh Fake Geto. If only he had some help from an unlikely ally. Mahito leaps at Fake Geto in an attempt to replenish himself, but his attack is parried and the absorption process from Fake Geto begins. I've always known it because I was born of humans. Ever since that glance Mahito threw at Fake Geto back in the subway, he's known that this betrayal was coming. Of all the characters in the show, few understand the human condition better than Mahito. And as he leaves those parting words, the assimilation begins. A quick process in the manga is stretched out in the anime as Mahito's body contorts. He attempts to claw away like he did when running from Yuji, and summons hands that all reach to grab hold of something, anything that will save him. But in the end, Mahito's absorbed, and now Fake Geto has his hands on Idol Transfiguration. I would have still rather Yuji get the kill, but Jujutsu Kaisen just doesn't play ball like the rest of them. The rug is constantly being swept under the feet of our heroes, and this time, us, the viewers, as well. Yuji's speech and chase was cathartic, and all that was missing was the finisher from Yuji. I don't hate the direction personally, but I'm on team Yuji should have gotten the kill rather than the assist. And okay, listen, I've yapped for a little bit until now, but I don't even come close to the Yap King over here, and we've still got another episode. The guy just won't shut up and goes on and on about how, ew, Uzumaki kinda sucks, or recycled curses this, less versatility that. Just shut up, throat goat that ball, and extract the technique. Wait, did he just say extract? Before the Yap King can explain just exactly what extraction means in this context, the Kyoto students have made their way onto the battlefield and Jump Kaisen is back in full force. Usually we're used to the 2-on-1s, but this time around the entire squad pulled up and none of them can even land a hit. Mai, funnily enough, comes close, even getting praise from Fake Geto for bringing the blicky. Despite how much of a beating they can take, sorcerers are actually weaker than you'd think. It's like that scene where Krillin hits Goku with a rock, except in Jujutsu Kaisen, if you get shot without properly defending yourself, you can just die. And I kinda find that cool. And now, the moment we have all been waiting for, the honored one, standing above all, finally makes her way onto the battle scene. Blitzing Fake Geto and appearing behind him, Miwa uses 1% of her strength on the quick draw. Unbeknownst to her, however, Fake Geto was a little stronger than expected and blocks the attack, uses Maximum Uzumaki, and we get one of the coolest looking attacks in the series. The Uzumaki sequence was one that I had not considered prior to the episode actually. In the manga, it forms and is launched at Miwa almost immediately. In the anime, however, we get an entirely new sequence that rivals that of the movie. Like, seriously, this looks amazing. Where Geto's original Uzumaki was just a black amalgamation of curses with little tiny arms, Fake Geto's Uzumaki is only being powered by Mahito, and you can clearly see him influence the shape and form of the attack. The myriad of hands reaching out as if to touch Miwa, and then the eye as it expands, ready to engulf her completely. And from out of nowhere, the one least willing to be there, Kusakabe makes a save with a simple domain, deflecting the Uzumaki away from Miwa. Okay, I know what you all might be thinking. Why did Kusakabe even bother when Miwa already had Fake Geto exactly where she wanted him? And on that I say, I don't fucking know. As if this battle royale wasn't getting convoluted enough, Choso waddles in and drops a lore nuke. The brain inside Geto is actually none other than Noritoshi Kamo. No, not that Kamo. Rather, it is the stain on the history of Jujutsu, a sorcerer so devilish that he earned the nickname the most evil sorcerer in Jujutsu history. And above all that, Choso's father-ish. Choso and the remaining death paintings are created by a woman being impregnated by a curse and then having that woman's blood be mixed with Kamo's. No, not his. The result is 9 pregnancies, 9 abortions, and 9 cursed womb death paintings all connected by blood. And Yuji is somehow related, making him Choso's brother. A big point of contention I saw in some of my comments during Red Scale was that Choso was just a Joe Schmo with no connection to Yuji, and now I'm just wondering what some of you will say going forward and potentially going back and rewatching the episode with this added context, as well as, I guess, expanded scenes that we'll be getting on later down the line. And I'll just come out and say this. Choso did not throw hands like this in the manga. First of all, impressive feat by Uraume, being able to actually block piercing blood like that. Seriously, it looked like Choso's hands were gonna explode the way he was flexing that shit. Secondly, Choso may have been able to pull some sick shit against Fake Geto, but he is still completely outclassed because the amount of cursed spirits that this man can whip out at any moment really makes you believe when he says that Geto could have beaten Yuta. At one point, he completely redirects piercing blood with this curse and even tries to womp Choso. Like, it's just so cool. And also the curse from Hidden Inventory makes its way back, the little flying one. The gang spent a long time watching Choso get folded, but they finally decide to join in on the action. However, Uraume says no and zero diffs literally all of them. Heian era sorcerers are built different, I guess. But at the same time, it is kind of expected if you're gonna be Sukuna's ally. And I just love how cold they are as they prepare to off Choso, but Yuji comes in clutch with a dropkick. Uraume kicks it up a notch, almost killing everyone, but in the nick of time, special great sorcerer Yuki makes the save. My type of girls have big butts and mental issues. People had speculated prior to Shibuya that we would not be able to fit all of the arc in just 19 episodes. But the fact that they have not only done that, but have also blessed us with anime-only scenes like Choso getting his shit rocked, we couldn't have been more wrong, and the final episode is shaping up to be pretty awesome, and ending off on a very, very frustrating panel, at least for the anime-onlys. But let's save that for next week.
Jujutsu Kaisen Season 2 finally comes to a close this week, and what a journey it has been. From a surprising start with Mei Mei and Utahime dominating the first episode, to the evisceration of Gojo at the hands of Toji, his revival, ascension, and Geto's downfall. The start of Shibuya spearheaded by the death of Mekamaru, Gojo's sealing, the deaths of both heroes and villains alike, and finally, the crescendo, with Yuki Tsukumo making the save and confronting Pseudo Geto. Beyond just the anime, it's been a wild 4 months to go from a 0 viewer Andy to just hundreds of thousands of people watching these videos, so I wanted to take a moment to just thank you guys, and I look forward to 2024, tons of content planned out. Anyway, we'll move on with the episode. Having first shown up in the tail end of Hidden Inventory, Yuki's philosophy of evolving humanity through the extermination of cursed energy remains strong even today, much to the displeasement of Pseudo Geto, his ideology being that of optimizing cursed energy. The two are at a narrative and literal standstill. Yuki, not wanting to make a move before her allies have had ample time to get Toho and others to safety, continues her back and forth with Pseudo Geto. This episode is incredibly dense on information and very light on action, so I'll do my best to break down this Yap session, where Yuki envisions a world in which everyone is effectively a Jujutsu sorcerer, a world where the natural leakage of cursed energy is removed, and by proxy curses as well. Pseudo Geto, well, he isn't so kind. To him, the optimization of cursed energy is the next step in human evolution, a step that can only be taken through a motherfucking tournament arc, baby. Let's fucking go. Okay, I got a little carried away. When Pseudo Geto talks about optimizing cursed energy, he doesn't mean making sorcerers, non-sorcerers, cursed spirits train and hone their bodies to absolute perfection. Pseudo Geto is hundreds of years old. He's tried many different methods, but as he puts it, nothing he creates can exceed the bounds of his potential. What an incredibly hard line, and what a harder diss to his own son right in front of him. At death's door, Gojo unlocked his ability to use reverse curse technique. Just as Megami was about to summon Mahoraga one last time against the second finger bear, effectively ending his life, he achieved his domain expansion. If cursed energy is a byproduct of negative emotion, then those negative emotions must be at their highest at the point of death. Pseudo-Geto's plan involves creating chaos that he cannot control, and the way to achieve this is by having sorcerers, past and present, fight each other to the death to release that cursed energy, and what he plans to do with it remains to be said in the anime proper. Just like how Sukuna has traversed the ages as a cursed object, only to reincarnate within Yuji, hundreds of others have done the same through pacts with Pseudo-Geto. The seals on the cursed objects have been removed by him, and now hundreds of humans will have had their bodies taken over by sorcerers of the past. And to just add even more fuel to the fire, using Mahito's now extracted technique, which has been evolved because of his fight with Yuji, Pseudo-Geto remotely casts Idol Transfiguration on two types of marked humans. One, those that have ingested cursed objects already. Their bodies have now been altered to be strong enough vessels to not immediately die and house these reincarnated sorcerers. And to normal humans without the ability to use curse techniques, their brains have now been altered just like Junpei's was back in season 1, which allows them to have access to their own curse techniques. Essentially, what might end up happening is a battle royale if everything goes to plan. Guess I jumped the gun with the tournament arc. The chaos created by all the death and destruction is what Pseudo-Geto wants. Chaos that even he cannot control, allowing him to, in effect, bypass that limitation of his own potential. Yuki chastises Pseudo-Geto for not thinking through and underestimating human rationality. How many of these newly awakened sorcerers would actually attempt to kill each other right off the jump? But Pseudo-Geto hits her with your questions are lacking perspicacity. Where have I heard that word before?
My unmatched perspicacity, coupled with sheer indefatigability, makes me a feared opponent in any realm of human endeavor.
Oh fuck, he's a Tate fan. No wonder he loves talking about himself so much. But he's not technically wrong. This plan of his has been hundreds of years in the making, so for it to be foiled by something as fickle as human rationality would indeed be silly. Despite this, Pseudo-Geto isn't strong enough to fight everyone alone with Uraome down for the count due to Choso's blood, so he unveils the final kicker in his plan. Outside of vows made with sorcerers of the past, he'd also made vows with cursed spirits. However, these vows have become null and void now that he's in possession of Geto's body. With cursed spirit manipulation, he unleashes hundreds, no, perhaps thousands of curses. And a surprisingly beautiful track so late into the series erupts, perfectly encapsulating the mood of the scene. He makes his escape with the prison realm, but not without flaunting it one last time before dipping into the darkness. Yuji's cries out for Gojo ring through our ears, and the power cuts out. Hopefully that gives you an idea as to what just happened, and maybe showed you why they call him the Yap Demon. This portion of the episode was incredibly limited in motion, obviously, but it still featured some very creative shots, nice lighting, and some really strong and energetic drawings. Pretty much anything with Yuki was handled with utmost care, and I'm not exactly complaining. I joke about Pseudo-Geto's yapping, but the truth is, whenever he's on screen, the actual plot and lore of the series is moved forward much more than with other characters. This to me makes all of his appearances very enjoyable and incredibly important, and this one was not any different. What is very different, however, is the anime's take on the second half, aka the, we're at the end of our budget and time act. Jokes aside, in the manga, we're greeted with this set of pages. Utter chaos, chaos by design. With the news of Shibuya making its way to the masses, total panic. The anime's approach is much more detailed and surprisingly calm. People are unsure with what's happening and they just continue about their daily lives, blissfully unaware. Some even call what's happening a hoax, or, well, they're probably just recording a movie. The only ones in true panic are what I assume government officials with knowledge of cursed spirits and cursed energy. Plans get thrown out one after the other, but with how Gege writes the story, this might not be that important to us as readers. The scene shifts and Jujutsu Kaisen once again taps into its horror-esque nature. This admittedly long scene of a lost child scrounging up food in an abandoned supermarket is properly unsettling. At first, this ethereal-looking curse motions at the child to come closer, but as she makes her way towards the door, the curse's form becomes more and more apparent. And to be honest, Gege does a really good job at creating monsters, so much so that I'd love to see him attempt to create a horror manga just like Junji Ito. Who am I kidding? He's making that idol manga, isn't he? The girl can see curses, but she doesn't know what they are. This is what fools her into putting blind trust into this thing that she can only barely make out. And as she makes it past the door, the jaws of the fish from Nemo that had me scared of the ocean as a kid open wide. But
びっくりした。
Yuta makes a save, having been completely absent in the story since the events of Zero. He finally makes his return. I really like the slight redesign here for Yuta. He's a bit more built than he was in Zero, and the way he carries himself exudes the confidence that he had built up throughout the events of Jujutsu Kaisen Zero, and his eye bags have also been nerfed a little bit. Anyway, the original main character is back, and the good guys might finally have a fighting chance.
虎杖裕二は僕が殺します。
Oh, well, shit. Initially, I had thought and secretly hoped that the season would end right here. But I actually do like what they ended up squeezing in. The higher-ups ruling that Gojo is to be exiled, Yuji sentenced to be resumed and then executed by Yuta, and then Yaga to also be executed for aiding Geto and Gojo. It is nice that they included this, and I think it gives a good little teaser for what's to come in the future. This episode did feature a lot of time-saving techniques like reusing shots or long panning ones, but I think this shot of Yuji walking around just went on and on. But I get it. We'll never, we're never gonna shit on the animators here because they are the victims. You get the idea. With the thousands of curses released, Yuji claps his hands and two spring up at him, and Jujutsu Kaisen Season 2 is over. Give these animators a break. They just finished the season.